The invisible daughter. They made her bake the cake, then told her to leave. They made her bake the cake for free. They made her serve it with a smile. And when the last slice was gone, they handed her an eviction notice at her own sister's wedding reception. 30 days to disappear from the house she'd helped pay for. Lena Hart sat in the parking lot in a dress she'd sewn herself, watching her family toast a future she wasn't invited to. One phone call changed everything. If you believe a woman should never have to beg her own blood to see her, hit that like button. Drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments so I know how far this story has traveled, and stay with me until the very end, because what Lena does next will make you stand up and cheer. The parking lot behind the Ashbourne estate smelled like cut grass and cold money. Lena Hart sat on the curb in her champagne-colored dress, the one she'd stitched herself over 3 late nights in the back of her pastry studio because her mother said the bridesmaid gown Celeste had picked out wouldn't flatter Lena's shape. She had the shoes off. Her feet were bleeding in 2 places from the straps. She could hear the string quartet inside, muffled through the limestone walls, playing something that sounded like it belonged in a perfume commercial. She checked her phone. 7:43 p.m. The ceremony had ended over an hour ago. The photographer had taken the family photos without her. All of them. Every single pose. The parents with the bride, the parents with the groom, the whole family in a horseshoe on the grand staircase. Lena had stood to the side with her camera bag, waiting for someone to wave her in. Her mother, Diane, had caught her eye once and then looked past her like she was a valet. "We'll get one later, honey," her father, Richard, had said, patting her shoulder as he walked by. They had not gotten one later. Lena pressed the cold water bottle against her wrist and tried to breathe through her nose the way her therapist had taught her. In, 4 counts. Hold, 7, out, 8. She got to out and heard her own voice crack in her throat, small and wet, and she stopped breathing altogether and just stared at the asphalt. "You okay, miss?" A valet, maybe 22, in a red vest. He had the face of someone who'd seen a lot of rich people cry outside this building. "I'm fine," Lena said. "I'm the bride's sister." "Oh." He nodded like that explained everything. "You want me to get you a car?" "No." She tried to smile. It came out wrong. "No, thank you. I'm the one who made the cake. I have to go back in for the cutting." He looked at her for a beat longer than was comfortable and then walked off, and she sat there feeling the weight of being seen by a stranger in a way she had not been seen by her own family in 31 years. Her phone buzzed, a text from Celeste. "Celeste, where are you?" "The speeches are starting. Mom is pissed." Lena stared at it. Mom is pissed. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I noticed you weren't in the photos." Not, "Thank you for the cake that cost you $4,000 in ingredients and 2 weeks of your life." Mom is pissed. Because Lena, who had driven 40 miles with a 6-tier cake in the back of a refrigerated van at 5 a.m., who had assembled it on site in a kitchen that wasn't hers, who had stayed through the ceremony to make sure the buttercream didn't slump in the heat, had had the audacity to step outside for 5 minutes to cry. She typed "coming" and then deleted it. She typed "give me 10" and deleted that too. Finally, she just put the phone face down on the curb. The valet had gone back to his stand. Somewhere behind the estate, a swan was honking. An actual swan. Celeste had rented swans for her wedding. Lena had stood in the planning meeting 6 months ago and watched her mother sign the deposit check for the swans, $1,800, and had not said a word when, the same week, her father told her he couldn't loan her $2,000 to replace the commercial oven that had finally given out at the studio. "It's not personal, Lily," he'd said, not looking up from his laptop. "It's just not a good time for us." The oven had been repaired on a credit card she was still paying off. The swans were, she assumed, inside somewhere, eating shrimp. Lena picked up the phone again and opened her contacts and scrolled. Not to Celeste, not to her mother, not to her father, not to her brother Mason, who had told her this afternoon that her lipstick was a lot. She scrolled until she got to the name she had been avoiding all day. Adrien Cole. She stared at it. She had not called him. She had told herself all week that she would get through this wedding without calling him, because Adrien Cole had a way of showing up, and she did not want him to show up to this. Her thumb hovered. Inside the estate, a microphone squealed and a man's voice, the DJ, probably, said something she couldn't make out. Laughter. Applause. The faint clink of crystal. She pressed call. He picked up on the second ring. Hart. His voice was low, a little rough, like he'd been in a meeting all day. You're supposed to be at a wedding. I am at the wedding, she said. Her voice came out thinner than she'd meant it to. I'm in the parking lot of the wedding. A pause. What happened? Nothing. She laughed, which was a mistake because the laugh broke in the middle and turned into something else. Nothing happened. That's the problem. Nothing ever happens. Lena. I'm fine, Adrien. I just wanted to hear a voice that wasn't... She stopped. She pressed the heel of her hand against her eye. I'm going back in. I have to do the cake. Where's the venue? Don't. Where's the venue, Lena? Ashbourne Estate, off Route 9. But don't... Adrien, I mean it. Don't come out here. My mother will... I'm 40 minutes away. Adrien, I'm not coming in. I'm just going to be in the parking lot. If you need me, I'm there. If you don't, you won't see me. She closed her eyes. She hated how much better it felt, just knowing. Okay, she whispered. Hart. Yeah. You are not their employee tonight. You are not their cake lady. You are their daughter and their sister. And if anyone forgets that, you remind them, or you come outside and I will. She didn't say anything. She couldn't. Go, he said, softer. I'll be there. She hung up and sat in the parking lot for another 90 seconds, and then she put her shoes back on, even though it hurt, and she stood up, and she smoothed the champagne silk over her hips, and she walked back into the Ashbourne estate like a woman heading into her own execution. The reception hall had been done up like a fever dream, 12-foot centerpieces of white peonies and silver-dollar eucalyptus. Gold chargers. A 30-foot table for the head party, and 8 round tables of 10 for the close family and dearest friends. Celeste had drawn Lena's name on the seating chart on a table in the back, labeled Table 14, Hart Extended. It was the table for second cousins and her father's old business partner. Lena had not commented on this. Lena had not commented on a lot of things. She walked in through the service entrance because that was the door she'd come in through that morning with the cake, and because she did not want to walk down the main aisle in a dress she'd made herself and have her mother's friends look at her like she was the help, which, she supposed, tonight she was. Her cake sat at the center of the room on a round marble pedestal under a crystal chandelier, lit from below with soft, warm lights she'd paid for herself because the venue's standard lighting was ugly. 6 tiers. Hand-piped lace on the lower 3, fresh peonies cascading from the top, sugar-crafted, every petal individually painted with edible luster. The top tier was modeled after a piece of her grandmother's lace. Her father's mother, a woman who had, before she died, been the only person in that family who ever said the words, "I am proud of you," to Lena's face. It was the most beautiful thing Lena had ever made. Nobody was looking at it. People were dancing. People were laughing. People were taking selfies with the swans, who had been brought inside and were now, inexplicably, in a rented pond installation near the dance floor. Lena's mother spotted her from across the room and cut through the crowd like a shark. Diane Hart was 61 and looked 49. She had spent 30 years investing in her own preservation the way other women invested in their children. Her dress tonight was ivory, which Lena had privately found insane. Who wears ivory to their own daughter's wedding? And she had a champagne flute in one hand and a look on her face that Lena had known since she was 6 years old. "Where have you been?" Diane said. She said it quietly, which was always worse. I stepped outside. "Your sister is about to do the cake cutting. You were supposed to be by the cake." "I'm here." "You were supposed to be here 20 minutes ago." Diane's eyes went up and down Lena's dress. "Is that the dress?" "Yes." "It's..." Her mother made a small sound through her nose. "It's fine, Lena. Go stand by the cake. And for goodness sake, fix your mascara. You look like a raccoon." "Mom." "Go." Lena went. She stood by the cake and she fixed her mascara with her thumb, with no mirror, because she was not going to walk into the bathroom and risk anyone else looking at her right now. The photographer, a woman Lena had recommended, a friend from culinary school who had a side business, caught her eye across the room and gave her a small, confused wave, as if to say, "Where have you been? I tried to find you for photos." Lena smiled at her. It was not a real smile. Celeste came out of the crowd on the arm of her new husband, Brooks, a hedge fund associate with a jaw like a shovel. and she was glowing. She was radiant. She was everything a bride was supposed to be. She saw Lena and her face did something complicated, a flicker of something that might have been guilt, quickly painted over with performative warmth. "Lee, there you are!" Celeste threw an arm around Lena's shoulders for a photo that no one was taking. "Isn't this insane? Isn't this the most insane night?" "It's beautiful, Cel." "Look at the cake. Look at it. Everyone's been asking who did it." Celeste squeezed her arm. "I told them it was a bakery in the city. I hope that's okay. It's just, you know, Mom, she thinks it's tacky to say your sister made it." Lena's face did not change. She had been trained, over decades, to not let her face change. "That's fine, Cel. You're a lifesaver." Celeste kissed her cheek. "Seriously, you're the best." And then Celeste was gone, pulled away by a friend, and Brooks had not spoken to Lena at all, had not even looked at her. And Lena stood next to a 6-tier cake that her sister had just claimed credit for, and something in her chest, something very old that had been sore for a very long time, started to feel, for the first time, truly broken. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Adrien. "Here, back lot, take your time." She put the phone away. The speeches started at 8:15. Her father went first. Richard Hart was a man who had made his money in commercial real estate and had never in his life given a speech without turning it into a humble brag about himself. He talked about the bride for 90 seconds and about his own business acumen for 7 minutes. He toasted the family and raised his glass in the direction of Mason, Lena's older brother, and then to Celeste, and then he sat down, and he did not say Lena's name. The maid of honor was Celeste's best friend from Bryn Mawr, a woman named Tatum, who told 3 stories about Celeste that involved Rosé and 1 story about Brooks that involved a yacht. She did not mention the sister of the bride. Mason stood up for his brother's toast. He was 2 years older than Lena and had been since childhood Diane's favorite, the boy, the lawyer, the one who had married well and produced already 2 grandchildren. He raised his glass and told a story about Celeste as a little girl on a beach in Nantucket, and the whole room laughed, and then he said, "And of course we have to thank the real MVPs tonight, our parents, Richard and Diane, who made all of this possible." Applause. "And to our beautiful bride, my baby sister, Celeste, who has been the light of this family since the day she was born." Applause. And that was it. The light of this family since the day she was born. Lena was sitting at table 14 next to her father's old business partner, a man named Cliff, who kept calling her Lana. She watched her brother sit down. She watched her mother reach across the head table and squeeze Mason's hand and mouth perfect. She watched her sister dab at her eyes with a linen napkin. Nobody had said her name. Not once, not in any speech, not in any toast. She had baked the cake that anchored this entire room. She picked up her water glass and drank it very slowly, and she thought, with a clarity that surprised her, "I am going to get through this night, and then I am going to go home, and I am never going to come back." Except she didn't know yet that home was about to be taken from her too. The cake cutting was at 9 o'clock. Celeste had requested a moment with the cake before the cutting, which meant a 5-minute photo session in which the bride and groom posed with the cake from 17 angles while a small crowd watched. Lena stood behind the photographer, ready to step in if anything needed adjusting. A leaning peony, a smudge in the luster dust. "Oh my God," a woman was saying behind her. "Did you see the cake? It's unreal. Celeste said she flew in a baker from New York." "From where?" "New York. Some boutique place. She said it was a nightmare to coordinate." Lena did not turn around. She stared at the back of her sister's head. She counted to 10. The photographer finished. Celeste picked up the silver cake knife, an heirloom, Diane's mother's, which Lena had never been allowed to hold, and she and Brooks made the first cut together, to applause. They fed each other cake like civilized people, no face smashing, which Diane had specifically forbidden on the grounds that it was lower class. Lena stepped forward to collect the knife and begin the plating, because that had been the plan, because Lena had, at her mother's request, agreed to also serve the cake, because the venue's pastry team wouldn't do it justice. She was reaching for the knife when Diane caught her wrist. Not hard, just firmly. "Lena," her mother said in a voice just above a whisper. "Not right now. Celeste wants to do it with Brooks. They're going to serve the head table themselves." It's a moment. Mom, the cake has a structural Lena. The third tier has a dowel system that needs to be Lena. Lena stopped. She took her hand back. She stepped away from the cake. Celeste picked up the knife and cut the cake wrong. She cut straight down through the structural dowel of the third tier, because of course she did, because she had never made a cake in her life. And the third tier tilted and one of the sugar peonies fell off and landed in the buttercream with a soft splat. And Celeste let out a little yelp and said, "Oh my God!" And there was a ripple of laughter. Brooks said loudly, "Guess the baker didn't build it strong enough." The room laughed. Lena felt something go very quiet in her head. It was not a loud feeling. It was not rage. It was a silence, the kind of silence that comes over a kitchen right before the gas catches. She walked forward calmly, and she reached across her sister, and she pulled the dowel, and she stabilized the third tier, and she wiped the smeared peony off the side of the cake with a napkin from her clutch. She did all of this in about 6 seconds. Nobody seemed to notice. Celeste had already moved on, was already laughing with a guest, was already holding up the knife for another photo. Diane leaned into Lena and said, under her breath, "Don't make a scene." Lena looked at her mother. "I wasn't," she said. She stepped back from the cake. She found the bathroom at 9:20, and she stood in a stall, and she put her forehead against the cold marble wall, and she did not cry, because she was not going to give them that, not here, not in a dress she had made herself. Her phone buzzed. "Adrien, you good?" She typed, "Still here." She flushed a toilet she had not used, because she did not want anyone in the other stalls to wonder why she was in here for so long. And then she washed her hands and she looked at herself in the mirror. Her mascara was not, in fact, smudged. It had never been smudged. Her mother had lied to her to make her feel ugly on purpose. A small wedding day cruelty, the kind Diane had been specializing in for decades. She was staring at her own face when the bathroom door opened and she heard her mother's voice in the hallway. "Not like she contributes anything, Linda. She plays with flour for a living. I love her, I do, but Richard and I have been carrying her for years. The house alone," a laugh. The other woman, Linda apparently, one of Diane's tennis friends, said something Lena couldn't make out. And honestly, after tonight, we've decided. It's time. Richard's been saying for a year now that she needs to grow up, and we can't enable it anymore. We're giving her 30 days. Lena stopped breathing. 30 days? Linda, to find her own place. Richard already had the lawyer draw something up. We'll tell her tonight, probably. Get it done, rip the Band-Aid off. Celeste and Brooks want the guest house for when they visit. And frankly, Lena's been living there rent-free for 4 years. It's embarrassing. Mason was out of the house at 22. Oh, Diane. She'll be fine. She has her little bakery. And she's always been, resourceful. Lena stood very still in the stall. She put her hand over her mouth. She had been paying her parents' rent, $800 a month, every month, for 4 years into her father's account. Contribution toward utilities and upkeep, he'd called it when he'd set it up. She had the Venmo history. She had the memos. March rent, April rent, May rent. She had not been living there rent-free. She had been paying them to live in a 2-bedroom guest house that they didn't use, that had been sitting empty for a decade before she'd moved in when she was broke and building the business. She had been paying them rent, and her mother was telling her friend she was a freeloader. The 2 women left the bathroom, still talking. The door swung shut. Lena did not move for a long time. Then she came out of the stall and she washed her hands again, very slowly, and she looked at her own face in the mirror, and she did not recognize the woman looking back at her, because the woman looking back at her was not crying. The woman looking back at her looked like she had just decided something. Boom. She went back to the reception. She took her seat at table 14. Cliff was trying to tell her about a golf trip. She smiled and nodded, and she said, at the right moments, and her mind was somewhere else entirely, a place colder than she had ever let herself go before. At 9:45, her father stood up. Richard Hart walked from the head table to the microphone in a way that Lena recognized. It was his announcement walk. The walk he'd done when he bought the lake house. The walk he'd done when he announced Mason's partnership. He tapped the microphone. The DJ cut the music. "If I could have everyone's attention," Richard said, and the room quieted. Lena's stomach dropped. Not here, not in front of 400 people, please, not here. I don't want to take away from the bride and groom, Richard said, in the tone of a man absolutely about to take away from the bride and groom. But Diana and I had a thought tonight, watching Celeste and Brooks start their new life together. A thought about family, about what family means, about legacy. He gestured to Celeste and Brooks, who looked charmed and confused in equal measure. We want to announce that Diana and I will be gifting the Ashbourne guest cottage, Lena's cottage, which was not at the Ashbourne estate, but the lake property, to Celeste and Brooks as a wedding gift, effective at the end of next month. Applause. Lena's ears started to ring. And, her father continued, in the spirit of new beginnings will also be, well, we think it's time for all our children to be living independently. Lena, sweetheart, stand up. The room turned. Lena did not stand up. Lena, honey, stand up. We want to celebrate you too. A slow, humiliating quiet. Lena stood. Her face was very hot. Her knees were shaking, and she hoped no one could see it. Our daughter Lena, Richard said, with a warm, fatherly smile that did not reach his eyes, has been living in our guest house while she's been building her little pastry business. And we are so proud of how far she's come. So proud. Then applause. Someone said, "Aw," and we think it's time for her to take the next step. So, as of 30 days from today, Lena's going to be moving out and into her own place, and Celeste and Brooks are going to be moving in. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. For all of us. To new beginnings. The room raised their glasses. Lena stood, burning, in a silk dress she had sewn by hand, at a table full of strangers, and watched her father toast her eviction like it was a graduation. Her mother was beaming. Celeste clapped her hands over her mouth in a show of surprise, and then jumped up and ran over and threw her arms around Lena and said, into her ear, "Oh my God, Lee, I had no idea. This is amazing. You're finally going to get your own place. Isn't it perfect?" Lena did not hug her back. Her arms stayed at her sides. "Say something," Celeste whispered, still smiling for the room. "Everyone's watching. Smile." Lena did not smile. Lena, "I need to sit down." "Don't be weird, just, I need to sit down, Celeste." She sat down. Her sister stood next to her for a beat, the smile frozen on her face, and then went back to the head table, throwing a look over her shoulder that Lena had been receiving from Celeste since they were children. The "you're embarrassing me" look, the "why can't you just be normal" look. The music started again. People went back to their drinks. Cliff next to her leaned over and said, "Well, that's exciting, honey. Your own place, at your age too." Lena picked up her clutch. She picked up her clutch, and she stood up, and she walked, not fast, not slow, through the tables, past the cake, past the swans, past the photographer who had not photographed her, past her mother who did not look up. And she walked out of the reception hall into the lobby and into the parking lot, and the night air hit her face like a slap, and she kept walking. She did not know where she was walking to. She was walking away from a building. A car door opened in the dark. "Heart!" She stopped. Adrien Cole was leaning against the hood of a black SUV in the farthest row of the parking lot, his tie loosened, his jacket off, a coffee in one hand. He had clearly been standing there, doing nothing, for a long time. He was looking at her face. Whatever he saw there, he put the coffee down on the hood of the car. "Okay," he said quietly. "Come here." She did not come here. She stopped in the middle of the parking lot, 10 feet from him, in her bleeding shoes, and she said, in a voice she did not recognize, "They're kicking me out." "What?" "Of the guest house. My dad just announced it. To everyone, to the whole—" "He announced it, Adrien. He made a toast. He gave the house to Celeste." Adrien did not move. His jaw did a thing she had seen it do exactly twice before, both in business meetings. 30 days, Lena said. "He gave me 30 days. He said it like it was a gift, like I've been a charity case. I pay them rent, Adrien. I pay them $800 a month. My mother told her tennis friend I'm a freeloader. I heard her. I was in the bathroom stall, and she walked in and she told Linda Carmichael that I'm a freeloader and they're carrying me. And then my dad, he got up. Her voice broke. "I made the cake," she said. "I made the cake. For free." It had $1,200 of ingredients. I worked on it for 2 weeks. I slept in the studio. And Celeste told people a bakery in New York made it, and Brooks made a joke about how the baker didn't build it strong enough, and my mother grabbed my wrist when I tried to fix it and told me not to make a scene. Lena. And I didn't make a scene. Adrien, I never make a scene. I have never made a scene in my entire life. I have been good. I have been so good. And they... Lena. And they still... He caught her when her legs gave out. She hadn't realized she was going down until his arm was around her back. And then she was sitting on the hood of the SUV with her face against his shoulder. And she was not crying. Not really. She was making a sound that was older than crying. A sound she had been holding in since she was 8 years old, and her mother had told her that her drawing was cute and thrown it away. Adrien did not shush her. He did not say it's okay. He did not say anything for a long time. He just put his hand on the back of her head and let her make the sound. After a while, she said into his shoulder, "I don't have anywhere to go." "Yes, you do." "I don't, Adrien." "Yes, you do." "My studio's not zoned for residential." "I know." "I can't afford first and last and a deposit in 30 days, not with the new oven still on the card." Lena. "And I can't ask you. I can't. I'm not going to be one of those women who... Heart." She stopped. He pulled back just enough to look at her. His face in the dark was very still. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow from a car accident when he was 19. She had, at some point in the last 8 months, memorized it. "You are not asking him," he said. "I am offering. And before you say anything, I'm not offering my apartment because I know you, and I know you will set fire to yourself before you let that happen. I have a friend. She has a 2-bedroom in Riverton. Her tenant moved out last week. It's $1,200 a month, which I happen to know is less than what your parents have been charging you. She'll hold it for you for 30 days if I text her tonight. That's it. That's the whole offer. You pay your own rent. You sign your own lease. I just make one phone call." She stared at him. "Why?" she said. "Why what? Why are you here, Adrien? Why are you in this parking lot? We've been on 4 dates. 4. You don't owe me this. You don't owe me any of this." He looked at her for a long moment. "Heart," he said. "I've been here since 8:17. I've been standing in this parking lot for 90 minutes drinking gas station coffee. You know why?" "Why?" "Because you called me. And in the 8 months I've known you, that is the first time you have ever called me for anything. Not a ride, not a favor, not a bad day. Nothing. You have never once asked me for a single thing. And tonight, you called, and your voice sounded like something had broken. And I got in my car. Because a woman who has never asked for anything, when she finally asks, you show up. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's why I'm here." Lena closed her eyes. "I can't go back in there," she said. "You don't have to. My purse is at the table. My car keys are in my purse." "Which table?" 14, back left." He nodded. He stood up. He put his jacket around her shoulders, which was something she had previously only seen in movies, and had privately thought was a stupid gesture. It was not stupid. It was warm. "Stay here," he said. "Don't move." "Adrien, I'm going to get your purse." "Adrien, my parents are in there. My mother is in there. She will..." "I know. She'll make a scene. Let her." And before Lena could say anything else, Adrien Cole, in his rolled shirt sleeves and loosened tie, walked across the Ashbourne Estate parking lot and through the main entrance of her sister's wedding, and Lena sat on the hood of his SUV in his jacket and waited. She could hear faintly the music starting up again inside. A new song. Something up-tempo. Everyone would be dancing by now. Nobody would notice she was gone. Except she realized that wasn't true anymore. Somebody would notice. Because Adrien was about to walk up to table 14 and pick up her purse and walk out. And he was not the kind of man who went unnoticed in a room, and her mother was going to ask who he was, and he was, Lena suspected, going to tell her. Lena looked up at the sky above the Ashbourne Estate. The stars were not visible because of the lights from the venue. She could hear the swan somewhere, honking in the distance, eating $1,800 of shrimp. She tightened Adrien's jacket around her shoulders. She thought about the 30 days. She thought about her cake. The lace she had piped by hand for her dead grandmother, sitting inside that building, being eaten by people who thought it had come from New York. She thought about her mother's hand on her wrist. Don't make a scene. She thought about the 8 years of rent she had paid. She thought about every Christmas she had bought presents for people who had bought her socks. She thought about the drawing her mother had thrown away. She thought, for the first time in her life, a sentence that had been trying to form in her head for 31 years and had never made it all the way to the front. They were never going to love me. Not because she hadn't earned it, not because she hadn't been good enough, not because she hadn't baked the right cake or worn the right dress or stayed quiet at the right moments. They were never going to love her because they didn't know how. Not her, not the way she needed. They had decided a long time ago who she was in the family, and the role did not include being loved. The role was to absorb. The role was to give. The role was to be grateful. And the terrible, clean, cold thing that Lena Hart realized, sitting on the hood of a stranger's SUV in a parking lot at 9:58 p.m. on the night of her sister's wedding, was this. She did not have to play the role anymore. She could just stop. She could just stand up in her handmade dress with her bleeding feet and stop. The main doors of the Ashbourne estate opened. Adrien came out with her purse in one hand. He was walking fast. Behind him, through the door, before it swung shut, Lena heard her mother's voice, sharp, high, furious, say something that sounded like, "Who do you think you are?" Adrien did not turn around. He crossed the parking lot and handed Lena her purse. "Your mother has opinions," he said. "What did you tell her?" "I told her you were leaving." "That's it?" "She asked me my name. I told her. She asked me what my relationship to her daughter was. I told her I was a friend. She asked me if I knew you had been causing problems all night. I told her no. I told her the only person I had seen causing problems in that building was her." He paused. "And then I walked away." Lena put her hand over her mouth. "She's going to call me," she said. "Probably. She's going to call me all night. Block her." "I can't block my mother." "Okay, then don't. But you don't have to pick up tonight." She looked at him. "Adrien." "Yeah." "Take me home." "Which home?" She almost laughed. "I don't know," she said. "Anywhere. Not there." He nodded. He opened the passenger door. She got in. He closed it. He walked around and got in the driver's side, and he started the SUV, and they pulled out of the Ashbourne estate parking lot, and Lena watched in the side mirror as the building receded, all lit up, with her sister inside and her mother inside, and her father inside, and a 6-tier cake inside that had her grandmother's lace piped on the bottom of it. And she thought, very clearly, very quietly, "I am never going back there." They got onto the highway. The highway was almost empty. The dashboard clock read 10:07. "Lena," Adrien said after a few miles. "Yeah." "Are you okay?" She thought about it. She thought about it honestly, the way she had not been honest with herself about any of this for a very long time. "No," she said, "but I will be." He nodded. He did not say anything else. He reached over once, and he put his hand over hers on the console, and then he put it back on the wheel. Outside, the lights of the city began to gather on the horizon, cold and close, and full of a life she had not yet begun to live. In her clutch, her phone started to ring. It was her mother. Lena looked at it. She looked at the screen, at the picture of her mother she'd chosen when she was 20, and still thought that if she just tried hard enough, she could be the daughter her mother wanted. She did not pick up. She turned the phone face down on her knee, and she looked out the window at the dark road ahead, and for the first time all night, for the first time in a very long time, she breathed all the way in, and she breathed all the way out, and she did not count. The phone rang 11 times between the Ashbourne estate and the Riverton exit. Lena counted. She didn't mean to count, but the sound cut through the hum of the SUV in a way that made it impossible not to. Her mother would ring, let it go to voicemail, wait 90 seconds, and ring again. The voicemails were not stacking up. Diane Hart did not leave voicemails. She simply kept calling, a strategy she had developed over decades of being certain that if she was persistent enough, people would eventually do what she wanted. Adrien did not look at the phone. He did not look at Lena. He drove. Somewhere around the 12th ring, Lena picked up the phone and, without looking at it, pressed the side button to silence the ringer. She did not block the number. She was not ready for that. But she silenced it, and the cabin of the SUV went very quiet, and the only sound was the tires on the wet road and Adrien's breathing and her own. "You didn't eat," Adrien said after a while. "What? You didn't eat? At the wedding?" No, I wasn't really at the wedding. You were there for 4 hours. I wasn't eating for 4 hours. He glanced at her. His face in the dashboard light was careful. "There's a diner at the Route 9 exit," he said. "Open all night. They do breakfast." "Adrien, it's almost 11. Their pancakes don't care what time it is." She looked out the window. Her hands were shaking in her lap. She had not noticed until this moment. Some part of her. The part that had stood at table 14 and smiled at Cliff while her father gave her 30 days, was still running on the chemicals of the last 3 hours, and those chemicals were beginning to leave her system, and her hands were paying the price. "Pancakes are fine," she said. The diner was the kind of place she had driven past 1,000 times and never stopped at. Red vinyl booths, a counter with 6 stools, a chalkboard menu behind the register that hadn't been updated since the price of eggs went up in March. The waitress was 60-something with a name tag that said BEV, and she looked at Lena's silk dress and Adrien's wedding clothes and said, "Rough night, hun?" "Something like that," Adrien said. "Booth by the windows open. Coffee?" "Please." Lena slid into the booth. The vinyl was cold through the thin silk. Her feet had stopped bleeding, she thought, or at least had moved past the stage where she could feel them. Adrien sat across from her. He had taken his tie off somewhere in the drive. He looked tired in a way she had not seen before. Not the tired of a long day at work, but a deeper tired, like he had been holding his shoulders in a certain position for too long. "Your mother," he said. "What about her?" "She's going to show up at the studio tomorrow." Lena did not answer. She already knew this. She had known it from the moment the SUV pulled out of the parking lot. Diane Hart did not take unanswered calls well. She would ring the studio at opening. She would stand outside if she had to. She was a woman who believed that other people's boundaries were minor inconveniences to be negotiated past with sufficient volume. "I know," Lena said. "You have a plan for that? I was planning to not be there." "Okay." Bev brought the coffee. She set down 2 mugs and a little pitcher of cream, and she did not ask if they wanted to order. She just said, "I'll come back," and left them alone, which Lena appreciated more than she could say. Adrien poured cream into his coffee. He stirred it twice. He set the spoon down. "Hart," he said, "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it." "Okay. How much money do you have right now in your checking?" She laughed, a small dry sound. "Are you proposing?" "I'm trying to figure out if you can make rent in 30 days without sleeping in your studio." "Oh." She pressed the coffee cup against her cheek. The heat felt good. "I don't know. 3,000 maybe? I paid my suppliers last week, plus the oven is still on the card. I know. I have the October catering deposits coming in, another 4,000 if everyone pays on time. And I have the Blackwell Gallery tasting next Friday, which is a $5,000 booking, but they pay net 30, so that money doesn't hit until November." "What about savings?" "What about them? Do you have any?" Lena looked at him over the rim of her cup. "Adrien," she said, "I've been paying my parents $800 a month for 4 years. I've been buying my own groceries. I've been putting every cent I make back into the studio. I have $640 in savings. I know that because I checked it this morning, because I wanted to know if I could afford to tip the hairdresser extra." "Okay." "Don't say okay like that." "Like what?" "Like you're doing math." "I am doing math." "Well, stop." He set his coffee down. "Hart," he said, "I'm not going to give you money. I know you won't take it, and I know if I push it, you'll spend the next 6 months pretending I don't exist to prove to yourself that you didn't take it. So I'm not offering, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and you're going to listen, and then you can yell at me." "I'm not going to yell at you." "You might." "I won't. I'm going to call my friend Nora tonight, the one with the Riverton unit. I'm going to ask her to hold it for you for 30 days, no deposit, no credit check, because she owes me a favor and because I'll vouch for you. You pay her first month on the 1st, which gives you roughly 5 weeks to get the money together. You sign your own lease. You pay your own rent. I don't put $1 on that apartment, not one. If you can't make the 1st of December, then we talk again. But I think you can. I think once you're not paying your parents $800 a month to call you a freeloader, The math works. She stared at him. That's it? She said. That's it. That's what you were doing math about? Yeah. You were doing math about how to help me without helping me in a way I'd hate. Yeah, Hart, that's what I was doing. She set the coffee cup down. She pressed both hands flat against the Formica tabletop. She was not going to cry in a diner. She had cried enough tonight. She had cried more tonight than she had cried in probably the last 5 years combined, and she was, frankly, sick of it. Okay, she said. Okay, call Nora. You don't want to see it first? Adrien, I've been sleeping in a guest house that was built in 1987 and hasn't been renovated since. Unless your friend's apartment has a rat problem, I'll take it. He almost smiled. It was the first time she had seen anything close to a smile on his face since he'd come out of the Ashbourne estate with her purse. No rats, he said. She had the building inspected last year. Then we're good. He pulled out his phone. He stepped away from the booth to make the call. Lena watched him through the window as he stood on the sidewalk in his shirt sleeves, one hand in his pocket, his breath fogging in the cold. He was a man, she thought, who did not waste motion. Everything he did because he had decided to do it. He did not fidget. He did not shift. He stood in the cold outside a roadside diner and made a phone call that was going to change the direction of her entire life. And he did it the way another man might order a sandwich. She looked down at her phone. The screen showed 31 missed calls, 28 from her mother, 2 from Celeste, 1 from her brother Mason. No text from her father because Richard Hart did not text. He considered texting to be a female thing. She opened the thread from Celeste. Celeste, 9:47 p.m. Where did you go? Celeste, 9:52 p.m. Lena, Mom is losing it. Celeste, 9:58 p.m. Who was that guy? Celeste, 10:14 p.m. Are you seriously not coming back? This is my wedding, Celeste. 10:31 p.m. You are so selfish. Lena read the messages twice. The third time through, she noticed something she had missed. There was no, "Are you okay?" There was no, "I saw what Dad did." There was no, "I'm sorry." There was, "You are so selfish." Her sister had watched their father announce her eviction at a reception, had watched her sit at table 14 while the whole room toasted her removal, had watched her walk out, and the only thing she had to say, the only thing that had occurred to her to say, was that Lena was selfish for leaving. Lena locked the phone. She did not reply. She set the phone face down on the table. Adrien came back in. He slid into the booth. He looked at her across the coffee. Nora says yes. She's holding it till December 1st. The rent is $11.50, not $1,200. I was off. She's going to email you the lease tomorrow. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I do, actually. Okay. He picked up his menu. Then you're welcome. Now order something. You're about to fall off that bench. She ordered pancakes. He ordered a club sandwich and a side of bacon. They ate without talking for a while, and the silence between them was not the brittle, watchful silence of table 14, where every moment was a potential minefield. It was just silence. Two people who did not need to fill it. Halfway through the pancakes, Lena said, I have to go back tomorrow. To the house? To get my stuff. I'm not going to let them pack my things, Adrien. I have recipes and notebooks that go back 10 years. I have my grandmother's piping tips. She stopped. Her throat had closed up again. She took a drink of water. I have to get my stuff. Okay. I want to do it tomorrow, before they get back from the brunch. My mother planned a day after brunch at the club. They'll be out of the house from 9 to probably 2. If I go at 10, I can be in and out in 3 hours. You need help? I need a truck. I have a truck. You have an SUV. I have a truck also, Hart. I have 2 vehicles. One of them is a pickup. She looked at him. You are, she said, an extremely annoying man. I've been told. Fine. 10 a.m. I'll text you the address. I know the address. How do you know that? You told me 6 weeks ago when you were complaining about the drainage in the guest house shower. I remembered. She set her fork down. She looked at him across the table, at his tired face and his loosened collar, and the way the diner light made the small scar over his eyebrow stand out. Adrien, she said. Yeah. Why did you remember that? He didn't answer right away. He chewed a piece of bacon. He put the bacon down. "Because it's a thing you told me," he said. "And the things you tell me, I remember. That's how it works, Hart." She looked at her plate. She did not look up again for a long time. He dropped her off at the studio a little after midnight. She had told him she didn't want to go back to the guest house that night. She couldn't, not yet, not until she'd gone through her things and packed what mattered. The studio had a small office in the back with a cot she used during big jobs, when she had to be up at 4 to start laminating dough and couldn't justify the drive home. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't meant to be. But it was hers, and it was the only place in the world right now where no one was going to knock on the door. "Text me when you're inside," Adrien said, at the curb. "I will. I mean it. I know you do." She stood on the sidewalk in her ruined dress and watched him pull away. The street was empty. The studio's sign, "Heart and Honey," in gold script she had hand-lettered herself and paid a local sign maker to cut, glowed softly above the door. She let herself in. The bell jingled. The smell hit her first, the way it always did, and the way it always steadied her. Brown butter, vanilla bean, the faint yeasty warmth of a kitchen that had been working all day and was now cooling down. She turned on the small light over the counter. She locked the door behind her. She walked through the front of the shop, past the glass case where this morning there had been 16 kinds of viennoiserie, now empty and waiting to be restocked. She walked past the little round tables with their mismatched vintage chairs she had found at estate sales. She walked past the wall where she had hung, 5 months ago, her first ever feature in Edible City magazine, a photograph of her hands piping roses onto a cake, her face deliberately out of frame because she had been embarrassed at the time to have her face in a magazine. She walked into the back kitchen. She turned on the light. She stood in the middle of the room and looked at it. This, she thought, this was the thing they had never understood. This kitchen was not a hobby. This kitchen was not a little pastry business. This kitchen was a 4,000 square foot workspace in a gentrifying corner of the Millhouse district that she had signed the lease on when she was 27, alone, with a co-signer who was her former culinary school instructor because her own father had refused. She had spent 13 months renovating it, most of it with her own hands and a borrowed belt sander. She had installed the walk-in herself, with help from a contractor she'd paid in croissants. She had 2 employees now, Marisol and Jin, and a part-time dishwasher named Caleb who was working his way through community college. She did $80,000 in monthly revenue in a good month. She had been profiled in 3 magazines and 1 local TV segment. She had a waiting list for her custom wedding cakes that was currently 6 months long. Her mother had been to this kitchen exactly twice. Both times, Diane had stood near the door with her purse clutched to her chest like she was afraid of catching something. And both times, she had said, on the way out, some version of the same sentence. "It's cute, honey, but when are you going to get a real job?" Lena walked to the back office. She sat down on the cot. She took off her ruined shoes. She looked at her feet, which were swollen and raw, and she laughed, a small sound that had nothing happy in it. She texted Adrien, inside, locked in, going to sleep. He replied immediately, "Good, tomorrow 10. She plugged her phone in. She lay down on the cot in her wedding dress because she did not have the energy to change. And she pulled the thin blanket over herself, and she stared at the ceiling. She did not sleep for a long time. She thought about her grandmother. Her father's mother, Marguerite Hart, who had died when Lena was 19. Marguerite had been the one who taught her to bake. Marguerite had kept a little kitchen in the back of the Nantucket cottage, separate from the main house, where she made her own sourdough and her own jam and a lemon tart so perfect that Lena had, as a child, believed it was a kind of magic. Marguerite had been the one. When Lena was 12 and announced at a family dinner that she wanted to be a pastry chef, who had reached across the table and put her hand on Lena's cheek and said, in a voice that was quiet, but that everyone at the table heard, "Then that is what you will be, my love. And nobody at this table gets to tell you otherwise." Marguerite had been the only person in the Hart family who had ever said anything like that to her. The lace on the top tier of Celeste's cake was a replica of the lace on the collar of Marguerite's wedding dress, which Lena had kept in a cedar box under her bed in the guest house for 12 years. She had piped it freehand, from memory, over the course of 3 nights. She had done it because she had wanted, foolishly, to put a piece of the only heart who had ever loved her onto the cake at her sister's wedding. Nobody had known. Nobody had asked. Nobody had even looked at it closely enough to see. And tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that, whatever was left of that cake would be wrapped in plastic and shoved into the Ashbourne estate freezer, and someone would eat it at a brunch, and nobody would ever know what it was. Lena turned her face into the thin pillow and she cried for her grandmother in a way she had not let herself cry since the funeral. She cried the way a person cries when they are completely alone, which she was. She fell asleep sometime after 2. Her phone woke her at 6:43 a.m. It was Marisol, her head assistant, texting to ask if they were opening today or not, because she had seen Lena's social media had been dark since yesterday afternoon, and she wasn't sure. Lena sat up, her back aching, her dress wrinkled into a state that could not be recovered from, and she stared at the phone for a long moment before typing. Opening. I'll be out front by 7:30. Pastry case will be light today. Let's just do the laminated stuff that's already in the walk-in and a couple of simple cakes. No custom orders being taken today. Marisol replied within a minute. Got it, boss? Everything okay? Lena hesitated, then she typed, Not really. Tell you when you get here. She got up. She found a spare t-shirt and apron in the office closet and a pair of clogs she kept for long days. She pulled the dress off and folded it and set it on the desk. She would take it home, wherever home was, and she would hang it in a closet, and she would never wear it again, but she was not going to throw it away. It was a piece of the night. It belonged to her now, not them. She washed her face in the small bathroom. She splashed cold water on her swollen eyes. She looked at herself in the little mirror, and she thought, You look like hell. And she thought, That's okay. And she went out to open the shop. Marisol arrived at 7:15 with gin on her heels, and when Marisol saw Lena's face, she did not say anything. She just walked over and pulled Lena into a hug, which was something she had never done before in 2 years of working together. And Lena let herself be hugged for exactly 5 seconds before she stepped back and said, I'm okay. I'll tell you later. Let's open. They opened. The morning rush came in at 8, and it was a good distracting kind of chaos. The regulars, the commuters, the one woman who always ordered a Queen Amman and a black coffee and read a hardcover book for 45 minutes before leaving a $10 tip. Lena worked the register and pulled espresso and handed over paper bags and made small talk about the weather and some part of her, the small, steady, animal part that had gotten her through every difficult morning of her adult life, took over and did the work while the rest of her floated somewhere slightly above her body. At 9:15, her mother walked in. Lena saw her through the glass before she opened the door, and her stomach dropped, and she reached under the counter and found Marisol's hand and squeezed it once. Boss? That's my mother. I need you to take the counter. If she asks for me, I'm not here. Got it. Diane Hart came through the door like a weather system. She was in cream cashmere and a pair of sunglasses that cost more than Lena's monthly rent, and she walked directly to the counter as if she had been here 100 times, which she had not. Hi, welcome to Heart and Honey, Marisol said brightly. I'm looking for my daughter. I'm sorry, she's not in. Excuse me? She's not in. She had an appointment this morning. My daughter, Lena Hart, the owner. I know who you are, Mrs. Hart. Marisol's voice did not change. Lena, crouched behind the espresso machine where she could hear everything but not be seen, felt a rush of love for her. She's not in right now. Can I take a message? You can tell her that her mother is here, and she needs to come out and speak to me right now. She's not here. Young lady, ma'am. Marisol's voice stayed exactly as polite as it had been. You're welcome to wait. We have coffee and pastries, but Lena is not here, and if she were, I would still have to ask her if she wanted to come to the counter, and if she said no, she wouldn't come to the counter. Would you like a menu? There was a long silence. Lena could hear her mother breathing. She could hear the bell over the door as another customer came in, paused, sensed the temperature of the room, and backed out slowly. I'll wait, Diane said. Of course. Right this way. Marisol seated her mother at the table farthest from the kitchen, which Lena was grateful for, and brought her a complimentary Americano, which Lena was also grateful for, because it gave Marisol an excuse to walk away from the table. She came back into the kitchen and whispered, What do you want to do? Nothing. I want to do nothing. I want her to sit there until she gets bored and leaves. She doesn't look like she gets bored. She doesn't, but she has a facial at 11. She'll leave by 10:30. She never misses a facial. Boss? What? Are you okay? Lena looked at Marisol. Marisol was 26 and had a baby at home and worked here 40 hours a week and was the best pastry chef under 30 in the city, in Lena's completely biased opinion. Lena had hired her a year and a half ago, and in that time, she had become the closest thing Lena had to family in the actual, functioning sense of the word. No, Lena said, but I will be. Okay. I'm moving out of the house today, after she leaves. That's what the appointment is. Marisol's eyebrows went up, but she did not say anything. My father announced it at the wedding last night, Lena said. In a toast. He gave the house to Celeste. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Where are you going to live? Adrien found me a place. Adrien found... Marisol stopped. She pressed her lips together. Adrien? The Adrien. Tall Adrien. 4 dates Adrien. That Adrien. Huh, Marisol said. Don't huh me. I'm not huh-ing you. I'm just... Huh. Marisol. Boss, the man came to a parking lot at 10 o'clock at night and then found you an apartment inside of 8 hours. I'm allowed to, huh? Go make me a latte. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Lena hid in the kitchen for the next 43 minutes. She prepped a sheet of dough she didn't need to prep. She reorganized the walk-in. She folded a stack of clean kitchen towels that were already folded. At 9:58, Jin came back and said, she's leaving. She asked to leave a message. What was the message? She said to tell you. I wrote it down. She said, tell Lena that her father and I are hurt, and we're very disappointed, and when she's ready to apologize, we'll be home. Lena laughed. She couldn't help it. It came out of her in a burst, surprised and almost happy, a sound that startled Jin. Did I get it wrong? Jin said, worried. No, Jin, you got it exactly right. That's her. That's exactly her. She wiped her eye with the back of her wrist. Thank you. You can throw the note away. Jin nodded and went back out front. Lena stood in the kitchen and caught her breath. Her mother was gone. Her mother had come here, to Lena's place of business, to demand an apology for something Lena had not done, and had left a message telling Lena to come grovel, and it was, she saw it now, with a clarity she had not had 12 hours ago, absurd. It was genuinely absurd. It was the kind of thing that, if it had happened to a friend of hers, Lena would have been outraged on her friend's behalf. It had been happening to her for 31 years, and she had simply called it being a daughter. She pulled out her phone. She texted Adrien. She came by. She left. I'm heading to the house at 10. Meet you there. He replied, on my way. The guest house at the lake property was a small 2-bedroom cottage on the far side of a long gravel drive, tucked behind a stand of birch trees that had been planted, Lena suspected, specifically to hide it from the main house. She had moved into it 4 years ago when her apartment lease had ended, and her parents had, in a rare burst of apparent generosity, offered her the space for whatever you can manage. Whatever you can manage had turned out to mean $800 a month, which Richard had presented to her not as rent but as a contribution to upkeep. She had signed nothing. She had no lease. She had paid in Venmo for 4 years with memos that said rent. October, rent. November, because her father had suggested early on that she document the contribution for tax purposes. Lena, at 27, had thought this was kind. Lena, at 31, sitting in Adrien's pickup truck in the gravel driveway, understood that what her father had actually been doing was collecting 4 years of tax-free rental income from his own daughter, while simultaneously telling his friends he was letting her live there out of charity. She sat in the truck and she looked at the cottage. She had made this place beautiful. She had painted the kitchen herself, a soft sage green, because the landlord, her father, had said no when she asked if she could update the cabinets, so she had compromised on paint. She had hung curtains she had sewn. She had planted a small herb garden outside the kitchen window, rosemary and thyme and lemon balm, that she used in her baking. She had put framed prints on the walls because the walls had been blank. She had turned a neglected guest house into a home, and she had paid for the privilege, and her parents were going to let her sister Celeste move in and take all of it. You okay? Adrien said next to her. I'm going to cry a little. Okay? She cried a little. He waited. He had brought her a coffee and a bag of muffins from a place near his office, and she ate one of the muffins while she cried, which struck her, in the middle of it, as deeply ridiculous, And she started to laugh through the tears, and then she was just laughing, and then she was tired. Okay, she said, let's go. They went in. The cottage was quiet. Her parents' Range Rover was not in the driveway of the main house, 200 yards up the drive. The brunch at the club was, as predicted, keeping them occupied. Lena had 3 hours, maybe 4. She went straight to the bedroom. She had a plan. She had made the plan on the cot last night, when she couldn't sleep, going room by room in her head. The kitchen was last. It was the part that would break her, and she wanted to be mostly done before she had to face it. The bedroom first. Clothes, shoes, the cedar box with her grandmother's things, the 2 paintings her college roommate had made for her, the quilt her grandmother had sewn, the jewelry box with the 3 pieces that had belonged to Marguerite and that Diane had, miraculously, never tried to take back. She worked fast. Adrien took the boxes to the truck as she filled them. He did not go into the drawers. He did not touch anything she had not already put into a box. He carried the boxes out the front door, down the porch steps, across the gravel to the truck bed, and back again in silence, for an hour. She was on the 3rd box of books when she heard a car on the gravel. She froze. Adrien, coming back into the bedroom, saw her face. What? Somebody's here. I heard a car. He was already moving toward the window. He pulled the curtain aside 1 inch. He looked out. His jaw did the thing again. It's your brother, he said. Mason? Tall guy, dark hair, looks like a lawyer. Yeah, that's Mason. What's he doing here? I have no idea. The front door of this cottage opened without a knock. Mason had a key. Her parents had given him a key years ago for reasons Lena had never understood, because he had not once in 4 years stayed in the guest house. She heard his footsteps come down the short hall, and then he was in the bedroom doorway, in weekend clothes, chinos and a half-zip, looking at Lena with an expression that was not what she expected. He did not look angry. He looked uncomfortable. Lee. Mason. His eyes moved to Adrien, then back to Lena, then to the boxes on the floor. What are you doing? I'm packing. Mom sent me over. She said you weren't answering your phone. She said, I know what she said. Lee, come on, don't do this. Don't do it like this. Do it like what? Don't make it a whole thing. Just come to brunch. Come apologize. Dad'll roll it back. He doesn't actually want to kick you out. Is that what he said? He said he got carried away. He said he didn't mean 30 days. He meant more like a year. He meant he wanted you to start thinking about Mason. Just listen. Mason, stop talking. Her brother stopped talking. He had not expected her to interrupt him. He was a litigator. People did not interrupt him when he was talking. He was also, she realized, watching his face, slightly hungover from the wedding, and he had the look of a man who had been sent on an errand he had not wanted to run and was now trying to finish as quickly as possible. He said 30 days in front of 400 people, Lena said. He made a toast about it. He said it was a gift. He gave my house to Celeste. You stood up there and said Celeste was the light of the family since the day she was born, and you did not say my name, Mason. You did not say my name in any of it. Lee, that's a toast. That's just how you... Did you know Mom tells her friends I'm a freeloader? Mason blinked. What? Diane, our mother. She tells Linda Carmichael and probably everyone else at the club that I live here rent-free and that she and Dad are carrying me. I've been paying them $800 a month for 4 years. I have the receipts. I looked them up this morning. It is $38,400. Mason did not say anything. Did you know that? I didn't. Lena, I don't keep track of what Mom tells her friends. Did you know they were kicking me out of the house to give it to Celeste? Yeah, I knew that. When did you find out? He looked at the floor. Last week, he said. Last week. Lee, I told Dad it was a bad idea to do it at the wedding. I told him, you know, Lena, she's sensitive about this stuff. She's going to... Mason, I'm not sensitive. Okay, I'm not sensitive. I'm not making a scene. I'm not being dramatic. These are the words this family has used to make me shut up for 31 years, and I am done with all of them. So I am going to ask you one more time, and you're going to answer me, and then you're going to leave. Did you know? Yes. Did you tell them not to do it? I told them not to do it at the wedding. Did you tell them not to do it at all? Silence. Mason. Lee, it's their house. They get to... Get out. Lee, get out. He looked at her. He looked at Adrien, who was standing by the window with his arms crossed and had not said a single word since Mason walked in. He looked back at her. Lee, you're going to regret this. I'm really not. When Mom calms down, she won't. When Dad, Mason, get out of my house. It's not your... Get out. Her brother turned and walked out. She heard the front door close. She heard the car start. She heard it pull away down the gravel. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Adrien did not come over to her. He waited across the room, and he let her sit there for as long as she needed to sit. When she finally looked up, he said, "You okay?" "I've been better." "He's not going to come back today?" "I don't think so. He did what she sent him to do. He's going to go back and tell her I'm being impossible." "Okay, then we keep going." "We keep..." She nodded. She stood up. She went to the closet and pulled down the cedar box from the top shelf. Her grandmother's box, with the letters and the recipes and the photograph of Marguerite at 26, flour on her hands, laughing at something outside the frame. And she held it against her chest for a moment, and then she handed it to Adrien. "This one," she said. "Don't put this one in the truck bed. Put it in the cab, on the seat." "Got it." He took the box. He carried it like something breakable. He walked out to the truck, and Lena stood in the bedroom of the cottage she had painted sage green, and she looked at the walls, and she understood, with a clarity she had not had that morning, that she was never going to sleep in this room again. She was not sad about it. She was not sad about it at all. She turned to face the kitchen last, the way she had planned, because she had known all morning that the kitchen was the part that would cost her. Adrien had finished loading the truck by 11:40. The bedroom was stripped. The living room had been easier than she expected. Most of what was in there wasn't really hers. The furniture had come with the cottage. The rugs were her mother's cast-offs, and she had long ago learned not to put anything of herself into rooms her mother walked through. She had taken the 2 paintings, the wool throw her grandmother had made, and a small ceramic bowl Marisol had given her last Christmas. Everything else could stay. The kitchen was the part where she had lived. She stood in the doorway with a folded cardboard box under her arm and looked at it. The sage green walls, the open shelves. She had installed herself on a Saturday 2 years ago when a friend had lent her a stud finder, the cast iron skillets hanging on the pegboard over the stove, the narrow marble slab she had bought at a salvage yard for $60, and tempered chocolate on 100 times. The kettle on the back burner. The wooden spoons in the crock, most of them older than she was, inherited from Marguerite. The notebook on the counter where she kept her proofing schedules when she tested recipes at home. "Lena," Adrien said behind her. "I know. We're almost done. I know. Just give me a minute." He gave her a minute. He went out to the porch and stood on the steps and did not watch her through the window, which she noticed and was grateful for. She walked into the kitchen. She started with the shelves. She packed the wooden spoons first. She packed the bench scraper her grandmother had used for 51 years, the bowl of pink salt in a glass jar with a cork top, the stack of linen dish towels she had hemmed herself. She packed the copper mixing bowl, the real one, the family one, the one she had inherited over Diane's objections when Marguerite died, and she wrapped it in newspaper and set it on top of the cedar box's partner crate. She was on her knees in front of the lower cabinet, pulling out her good sheet pans, when she heard the front door of the cottage open. Not a knock, not a car, just the door. She froze. She looked up. Adrien was still outside. She could see his back through the kitchen window. So who? Footsteps. Light. Heels on hardwood. "Lena?" Her sister's voice. Lena stood up slowly, a sheet pan in her hand. She walked out of the kitchen and into the hall, and there, in the doorway of the guest house, in a silk slip dress under a cashmere coat and oversized sunglasses, was Celeste. Just married. Day 1 of her honeymoon, which Lena remembered now did not start until the next morning. There was a brunch, then a dinner, and then they flew out to Amalfi at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Celeste pushed her sunglasses up into her hair. Her eyes were puffy. She had obviously been crying or drinking or both. "You're here," Celeste said. "I'm here." "Mom said you would be. She was right." "How did you get in?" "I have a key." Celeste held it up. Her hand was shaking. "Dad gave me one last week. After they decided, after the... She trailed off. She couldn't say it. After they decided to evict me, Lena said evenly. You can say the word, Cel. It won't bite you. Don't be like that. I'm not being like anything. I'm describing what's happening. Celeste took a step forward into the hall. Her heels clicked. The cottage was very quiet. The truck bed full of Lena's life, the kitchen half-boxed, the front door standing open behind her sister. Through the doorway, Lena could see Adrien on the porch, his back very straight now, not turning around but listening to every word. I came to apologize, Celeste said. Okay, I didn't know Dad was going to do it like that. At the reception, Mom told me right before dinner, she pulled me aside and said, your father's going to make an announcement about Lena, don't look surprised, and I thought it was going to be, I don't know, a toast, a nice one, I thought. You thought what? I thought he was going to say something nice, Lena. I thought he was going to thank you for the cake or something. I didn't know he was going to... To what? To do that. Say the word, Celeste. Her sister's face tightened. To tell you to move out. I didn't know he was going to tell you to move out. In front of 400 people. I didn't know. Okay. I didn't, Lee. I promise. Lena looked at her. She thought about it. She thought about the flash of something that had crossed Celeste's face when Richard had started the toast, that flicker of oh no that Lena had seen and filed away as confusion. Maybe her sister was telling the truth. Maybe Celeste had not known it was going to be a public execution. Maybe Celeste had only known that the house was being transferred to her and had not known what form the announcement would take. And maybe that was worse, because it meant Celeste had known, at least a week before the wedding, that her parents were giving her Lena's home, and she had not called Lena. She had not texted. She had not said, hey Lee, I need to tell you something. This feels wrong. I don't think we should do it this way. She had picked out bridesmaid dresses with her friends, and she had let swans be installed in the reception hall, and she had gone to her final dress fitting, and she had let her sister bake her a 6-tier wedding cake for free, knowing the whole time that in 30 days that sister would be out on the street. Celeste, Lena said, what? When did Dad tell you he was giving you this house? Celeste paused. Tuesday, she said. Tuesday of last week. So 11 days ago, I guess. And in those 11 days, Lena said, you did not think to pick up your phone and tell me. Lee, you did not think to say, hey, by the way, I'm taking your house. It's not your house. It is my home, Celeste. Those are not the same word. You know that. You are not stupid. You know exactly what you were taking. I didn't take anything. Dad gave it to me. He offered. You said yes. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to call me. Celeste pressed her lips together. Her eyes filled. She was, Lena noticed, trying very hard to cry decoratively, the way she had cried at the wedding for photos, with the tears just welling and not spilling, the way she had practiced since she was 14. It was not working this morning. The tears spilled. They went down her face in messy streaks, and she made a sound that was not decorative, a small wet hiccup, and Lena stood in the hallway with a sheet pan in her hand and watched her younger sister cry and felt, to her own surprise, almost nothing. A small pity. The ghost of love. But not enough to walk toward her. I didn't know how to tell you, Celeste said. Her voice had gotten small. I didn't know how. Every time I thought about calling you, I just couldn't. And Mom said you'd be fine. Mom said you're tough. You've always been tough. You built that whole business by yourself. You'd figure it out. Mom said I'd be fine. Yes. Mom. Who told her friend last night that I'm a freeloader? Celeste blinked. What? I was in the bathroom. I overheard her. She told Linda Carmichael that Dad and I had been carrying me for years. That's... Lee, she wouldn't... Celeste. She doesn't mean... Celeste, stop. Please. For once in your life, stop defending her. Celeste stopped. The two sisters stood in the hallway of the cottage, and Lena set the sheet pan down on a stack of boxes by the wall. And she took a long breath, and she said, more quietly, I love you. I want you to know that because I'm not going to say it again for a while. I love you. You were my first friend. I used to sneak into your room at night when you had the flu in 3rd grade and read to you from the Nancy Drew books. Do you remember that? Lee, I do love you, but I'm not going to let you apologize to me today and then fly to Amalfi tomorrow and spend 2 weeks posting pictures on Instagram while I figure out where I'm sleeping. I am not going to make this easy for you. I'm sorry. I'm not. You had 11 days to call me, and you didn't, and you stood next to me at the cake and told me the bakery story so Mom wouldn't be embarrassed. And every single one of those things was a choice, Cel. Those were choices you made. Lee, you're being so... She stopped herself. Lena saw the words she had almost said. Dramatic, unreasonable, selfish. The family words, the old words, the ones that had been put into Celeste's mouth by their mother, the way a farmer puts salt blocks out for cattle. I was going to say something, Celeste said, and I stopped myself, so that's something, right? That's something, Lena said. That's a start. Can I hug you? Lena considered it. Then she shook her head. Not today, Cel. Maybe someday. Not today. Celeste's face crumpled, but she did not argue. That was new. In 31 years, Lena had never once watched her sister accept a no without arguing. Maybe, Lena thought, the wedding had knocked something loose in her too. Maybe Celeste was standing in this hallway because some small animal part of her had finally understood that what had happened last night was not normal, was not fine, was not a family doing family things. Or maybe she was just hungover and emotional. Lena did not know. She did not have to know. I'm leaving in about an hour, Lena said. You should go before Mom and Dad get back. If they see your car here, they're going to ask what you said, and I don't want you to have to explain it to them today. Go to your brunch. Go to Italy. Have a good honeymoon. When you get back, if you want to call me, call me. I'll probably pick up. Eventually. Eventually. Yeah, eventually. Celeste wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her mascara was ruined. She did not seem to care, which was also new, and which Lena noticed and filed away. Okay, Celeste said. Okay. She turned and walked toward the door. She stopped with her hand on the frame. Lee. What? The cake was really beautiful. Lena did not say anything. It was the most beautiful cake I've ever seen, and I knew it was Grandma's lace on the top. I knew the second I saw it. I didn't say anything because Mom was standing there, but I knew. I knew you did it for her. Lena closed her eyes. Thanks for telling me that, she said. I should have said something last night. Yeah, you should have. I'm sorry. I know. Celeste left. The door clicked shut. Lena stood in the hallway until she heard the car start and pull away. And then she walked into the kitchen and she sat down on the floor with her back against the lower cabinet, and she put her hands over her face and she did not cry. She had run out of crying. She just sat there and breathed and let the last 15 minutes go through her body like a wave. And after a while, she stood up and finished packing the sheet pans. Adrien came in when he heard her moving again. He did not ask about Celeste. He just said, "What's next?" The marble slab, the kettle, the spoons. Then we're done. Okay. They finished at 12:41. She knew the time because she checked the clock on the stove right before she turned the breaker off. A habit Marguerite had taught her: never leave a kitchen alive when you're not coming back to it. She flipped the breaker. The refrigerator hum died. The clock went dark. The kitchen she had built with her hands and her money and the last 5 years of her life was just a room again, empty, waiting for the next person to fill it. She walked out of this cottage without looking back. She did not lock the door. It wasn't her door anymore. Adrien was already in the truck. She climbed up into the passenger side. The cedar box sat on the seat between them. She pulled it into her lap and held it, and he pulled down the gravel drive and out through the gates, and the lake property disappeared in the rear view, and Lena did not cry, and she did not look back, and she did not say a word until they were 3 miles down the road. Then she said, "Adrien." "Yeah." "Thank you." "You already said that." "I'm saying it again." He nodded. He kept his eyes on the road. "You're welcome, Hart." Well, Nora's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted mill in Riverton, 2 blocks from a bakery Lena had always liked and half a mile from the river. Nora herself was there when they pulled up, a small woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a turtleneck, and the alert, slightly tired expression of a woman who ran 4 rental properties and a landscape architecture firm. She met them on the sidewalk. She shook Lena's hand. "You're the pastry chef." "I am. Adrien says you're a good one." Adrien doesn't know anything about pastry. Adrien says you're a good one anyway. Nora smiled. It was a small smile, not a fake one. Come up. Let me show you the place. The unit was a corner apartment with brick walls and huge factory windows, and a kitchen that was, to Lena's eye, slightly too small but workable, and a second bedroom that could be a proper office, and radiator heat that clanked when Nora turned it on and made Lena smile for reasons she did not entirely understand. It's not fancy, Nora said. It's perfect. The heat is inconsistent. The pipes bang. The woman next door practices violin 2 hours a day. She's a grad student. She's actually very good. But fair warning, I can live with violin. Good. I'll email you the lease this afternoon. First month on December 1st, that's fine. No deposit. You've got Adrien as your co-signer on paper, but that's just to make my accountant happy. In practice, I'm not going to chase you for anything. I've rented to Adrien's people before, and they always pay. Lena looked at Adrien. How many people have you? 3, he said, before she could finish. In 5 years. All of them paid on time. Don't read into it. I'm reading into it. Heart. I am. Nora watched them with the clear amusement of a woman watching 2 people try to pretend they were not what they obviously were, and she handed Lena a set of keys on a little brass ring, and she said, "Welcome to Riverton," and she left them to unload the truck. They unloaded the truck. It took 3 hours. By the time the last box was inside, the cedar box, which Lena carried up herself and set on the kitchen counter and did not open, the sun was going down over the river and the apartment smelled like cold brick and old wood and her own dish towels, which she had left on top of one of the open boxes, and which were beginning, faintly, to make the place smell like a kitchen she had worked in. She sat down on the floor in the middle of the living room. There was no couch. There was no bed. There were 14 cardboard boxes and a mattress she had bought at a discount store on the drive over, still in its plastic, leaning against the wall. Adrien sat down on the floor across from her. "You good?" he said. "I don't have any furniture." "You have a mattress." "I have a mattress in plastic." "That counts." "I don't have a dining table. I don't have a couch. I don't have... Adrien, I don't have a chair." "You will. You don't need it tonight." She looked around at the bare apartment. The windows were huge. The light coming in was the color of honey. The radiator clanked. Somewhere down the hall, faintly, she could hear a violin. A minor key, something she did not recognize being played slowly and well. She laughed. She did not know why. It came out of her, and Adrien watched her laugh. And after a moment he smiled too, a small, real smile, the first one she had seen from him in 24 hours. "I live here," she said. "You live here. I have an apartment. You have an apartment. I'm 31 years old, and I have my first real apartment that my parents aren't. That is actually yours. Mine." She pressed her hands against her face. Then she took them away and looked at him. "I can't let you leave tonight," she said. "Is that weird? Is that... I don't want to be weird about it, but I don't want to be alone here yet. Tonight. Can you... I'll sleep on the floor. I have a mattress. You sleep on the mattress. I'll sleep on the floor. Adrien, heart." His voice was very gentle. Nothing is happening tonight. Nothing happened last night. Nothing's going to happen tonight. You don't have to explain. Yes, I'll stay. I'll sleep on the floor." She nodded. She could not speak for a second. "There's a diner 2 blocks over," he said after a moment. "Probably better than the one on Route 9. You want dinner? Please. Pancakes?" She laughed, small and wet. "Pancakes." They walked 2 blocks to a diner called Hoffman's, and she sat in a booth across from him in the clothes she had packed in. Old jeans, a kitchen t-shirt, a cardigan that had been on the back of a chair at the cottage and she'd grabbed on the way out. And she ate a plate of blueberry pancakes and drank 3 cups of coffee and listened to him tell her about a case he was working on, a zoning dispute in a small town upstate, the sort of case he clearly found deeply annoying and was therefore interesting to hear him talk about. She did not think about her mother. She did not think about her father. She did not think about the toast or the cake or Mason at the door of the cottage that morning. She thought about radiator heat and violin music and the apartment key on its little brass ring in her pocket, and she thought, for the first time in a very long time, I am somewhere nobody can ask me to leave. 3 weeks passed. They passed in a way Lena would, years later, barely be able to remember in detail, because they were full of the small, dull business of rebuilding a life. The kind of days that do not photograph well and do not make for good stories, but are, she would come to understand, the days in which people actually become who they are. She did not hear from her parents. The calls had stopped after the second day, which surprised her. She had expected a siege. Instead, there was a silence, which was, she came to understand, a different kind of tactic. Diane Hart did not beg. Diane Hart withdrew affection and waited for the target to crawl back. Lena, who had spent 31 years crawling back, did not crawl back. Mason texted once, on day 6. He said, "Dad wants you at Thanksgiving. Just show up." We can all pretend none of this happened. Lena read the text 3 times. Then she wrote back, "No. But I love you. Tell the kids Auntie Lee says hi." Mason did not reply. That was fine. That was, she thought, about the level of response her brother was capable of. Celeste was in Italy. She posted, as predicted, pictures of herself on boats and at restaurants and in a white linen dress on a balcony in Positano. Lena muted her on every platform, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. She did not need to watch her sister eat burrata in the sunshine while she was assembling a second-hand dining table from a Facebook marketplace seller named Doug. She needed to focus. The focus was the studio. The focus had always been the studio, and something had begun to happen at the studio that she did not quite have the language for yet. 2 days after she moved in, on a Monday that was otherwise unremarkable, a woman walked into the shop at 9:30 in the morning and asked to speak with the owner. She was 40-something, in a dark coat and thin gold rings on every finger, and she looked around the case with the slow, careful attention of someone who actually knew what she was looking at. "I'm the owner," Lena said from behind the counter. "You're Lena Hart." "I am. My name is Odette Verlaine. I run the Blackwell Gallery downtown." Lena blinked. She knew the Blackwell Gallery. Everyone who lived in the city knew the Blackwell Gallery. It was the serious one, the one with the waiting list for memberships, the one that had hosted retrospectives for artists whose names Lena had, in culinary school, covered her own notebooks with. "We have a tasting booked with you for Friday," Odette said. "For the donor dinner. I wanted to come in first and see the work." "The work?" "Yes." Odette gestured at the case. "May I?" "Please." Odette ordered a Queen Amman, a lemon tart, and a small chocolate entremet Lena had been testing all week. She sat at a table by the window and ate them slowly, in that order, and Lena pretended to be busy at the register and watched Odette out of the corner of her eye. And after 20 minutes, Odette came back up to the counter. "Lena," Odette said. "Yes. The tasting on Friday is, I think, not going to be a tasting. I think it is going to be a conversation." "A conversation? About whether you would be willing to do something considerably more ambitious than a donor dinner. Do you have time to meet with me next week?" Lena stared at her. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I have time." Odette left a card. It had her direct number on it. Lena kept the card in the little pocket of her apron for the rest of the day, and every time she reached in and felt the stiff edge of it, her heart did something complicated. That night, in the new apartment, on the mattress that now had sheets on it, on the floor that now had a small second-hand rug, Lena lay on her back and stared at the ceiling and thought, something is starting. She did not tell her mother. She did not tell her father. She did not tell Celeste. She called Adrien. She told him everything in a rush, sitting up, her knees pulled to her chest. "Hart," he said when she finished. "That's huge." "I know." That's the Blackwell." "I know." "Are you calling to celebrate, or are you calling because you're scared?" "Both." "Okay. What are you scared of?" "That I'm going to mess it up." "You're not going to mess it up." "Adrien." "Hart, you're not going to mess it up. You know why?" "Why?" "Because you never have. In the time I've known you, you have never once messed anything up that mattered. You have been, in fact, the most reliably competent person I have ever met. You have watched me miss deadlines, forget dinners, and lose my keys on 4 separate occasions. You have not once failed to deliver on a single professional commitment. You're terrified of messing up because you've spent your whole life being told you would. It's a habit. It's not real." Lena pressed the phone against her ear. She was crying, quietly, the way she sometimes cried now. Not in grief, but in something that felt closer to relief, to the slow unclenching of a fist she had not known she was making. Adrien? Yeah. Why are you so what? So good at this? He was quiet for a moment. I had a sister, he said. Older. She died when I was 23, before you and I met. She was treated for a long time the way your family treats you. I watched it happen. I didn't understand what I was watching until she was gone. And I promised myself after that if I ever met another person who was being ground down like that, I was going to do whatever I could to make them stop grinding. That's the answer. That's the whole answer. Don't make me say more, Hart. I'm not good at this part. Lena could not speak for a long moment. What was her name? She finally said. Eleanor. Eleanor. Yeah. I'm sorry, Adrien. I know. I wish I'd known her. You would have liked her. She was a pain in the ass, funny, stubborn. His voice was careful. She would have liked you too. That's enough about that, Hart. Go to sleep. You have a tasting on Friday. She laughed, wet. Okay. Call me tomorrow. Okay. She hung up. She lay in the dark of her new apartment and she listened to the violin from down the hall. The grad student was practicing something in a major key tonight, bright and brisk, a piece Lena did not know. And she thought about Eleanor, and about Marguerite, and about the women who were not in the room anymore but were still, somehow, holding the room up. She slept. The tasting at the Blackwell on Friday was not a tasting. Odette Verlaine sat with Lena at a small table in the gallery's private back room, and she ate 4 small plates Lena had brought, and she asked questions Lena had not been asked before by anyone in her industry. Questions about color theory, about the emotional register of bitterness, about what it meant to her to work in a medium that disappeared the moment it was understood. Lena answered. She answered for an hour. She had not known she had this much to say about her own work. She had in fact been actively trained by her family to not believe her work had anything to say. She had been, for most of her career, a woman who baked beautiful things and apologized for them. At the end of the hour, Odette folded her hands on the table. Lena, she said, I would like to commission you for a solo exhibit. An exhibit, at the Blackwell. 4 weeks in the spring. You would design 12 pieces. They would be eaten over the course of the opening and the following 3 weekends, so there would be 4 tastings total, invitation only. I would handle press. We would charge $250 a ticket, which would go to the gallery's operating fund, and your fee would be $50,000 plus materials. I am prepared to wire a $25,000 retainer on Monday. Lena opened her mouth. She closed it. 50,000, she said finally, because it was the only word that would come out. Plus materials. I'd expect materials to run 8 or 9. Bill them to the gallery. Odette, if you need time to think, that's fine. I know this is a significant yes. Ask, so you should feel free to yes. The answer is yes. Odette smiled. It was the first unguarded smile Lena had seen on her face. Good, she said. I was hoping you'd say that. They talked for another hour, about timelines and press, and what Odette thought the work should do. And when Lena walked out of the Blackwell Gallery at 4 p.m. on a Friday in late November with a signed letter of intent in her bag and a $25,000 retainer coming on Monday, she stood on the sidewalk in her wool coat and her second-best pair of boots, and she looked up at the gray sky, and she did something she had not done in years. Not since before Marguerite died. Not since she was a child who still thought she might be loved. She laughed out loud. On the sidewalk? By herself. Like a person who had just remembered she was alive. The retainer hit her account on Monday at 9:14 a.m., and Lena sat at her small kitchen table in Riverton, staring at her phone, and she did not move for almost 10 minutes. $25,000. She had never, in her life, had $25,000 in her checking account at one time. She had, in her entire adult life, never had more than about $6,000, and that had been briefly, during a summer wedding season 2 years ago, and she had immediately spent most of it on a new proofing cabinet. $25,000 was the kind of number that had, in her mother's house, always been attached to furniture, or to Celeste's semester abroad, or to the deposit on some vacation that Lena had not been invited on. It was sitting in her account, with the memo line Blackwell Gallery, Verlaine Commission, retainer 1/2. She paid her rent first, $11.50 to Nora, a full month early, because she wanted the relief of knowing December was already handled before she did anything else. Then she paid off the oven. The full balance, not the minimum. $3,840 gone in a single transaction, and the little chime the banking app made when it cleared was, she realized, the happiest sound she had heard in weeks. She sat back in the cheap kitchen chair and she breathed. Then she opened a new text thread with Marisol. "Come in an hour early today. We need to talk about hiring." Marisol replied in 30 seconds. "Good? I'll explain. Boss, are you crying a little, good ones?" "Yeah, good ones." Nuts. The weeks before the exhibit were the hardest Lena had ever worked, and also the best. She hired a second assistant, a young man named Theo, who had graduated from the culinary program the year before, and had been working the overnight shift at a hotel banquet kitchen, and nearly wept when she offered him the job. She gave Marisol a raise, a real one, not a token one, 15%, and made her the shop manager, which Marisol had functionally been doing for a year without the title or the pay. She brought in Caleb from part-time to full-time and told him she'd cover the rest of his community college tuition if he stayed on through the spring. "You don't have to do that," Caleb had said awkwardly in the back office. "I know I don't. I want to." "Lena." "Caleb, it's $1,800 a semester. I just got a retainer that's 15 times that. Please let me be a good boss. I've been a mediocre one for too long." "You're not mediocre, I could pay you more. I'm paying you more starting next check. Just don't argue with me about school. Take it, okay?" He had nodded, and he had not been able to meet her eyes for the rest of the day, and that night when she was locking up, she had found a small, slightly crooked note on her desk that said, "Thanks, boss," in his handwriting, and she had put it in the top drawer where she kept the things that mattered. The design for the Blackwell exhibit consumed her. She woke up at 4 most mornings, earlier than she had in years, and walked in the dark to the studio and worked before the shop opened, sketching on butcher paper and testing components in the quiet hours when nobody was watching. Odette had given her a single directive: make 12 pieces. They do not have to match. I want to see what you see when no one is telling you what to see. It was, Lena realized, the scariest thing anyone had ever said to her, and also the most freeing. She started with her grandmother. The first piece she designed was a small glass dome containing a single miniature pear, poached in lavender wine, sitting on a bed of what looked like lace but was actually sugar. The same lace pattern she had piped onto Celeste's cake, Marguerite's wedding collar, rendered in spun sugar so fine it would shatter at a breath. The piece would be broken, deliberately, in front of the first guest who chose it. They would eat the pear with their hands. She called the piece Inheritance. The second piece was the plate of 6 small tarts, each filled with a different preserved fruit from Marguerite's old recipes: quince, sour cherry, greengage, damson, medlar, rosehip, arranged in the shape of a family tree, with Marguerite's name and nobody else's, an edible gold leaf at the root. She called it Who Fed You? The third piece was the one that frightened her: a single mirror-glazed entremet, black currant and dark chocolate, placed on a small silver plate that had belonged to her grandmother and that Lena had polished herself until her arms ached. The plate had an engraving on the underside that nobody but Lena would ever see. The piece was designed to be eaten in one bite, in silence, by a single guest, while the other guests watched. She called it The Youngest Daughter. By the time she had designed 8 of the 12 pieces, she understood something she had not understood before, which was that this work, this strange, obsessive, personal work, had been inside her for years, waiting. Her family had believed her work was a hobby. Her mother had called it playing with flour. Lena had, at some level, believed them. She had made beautiful cakes and taken beautiful orders and run a beautiful shop, and she had never, until now, allowed herself to make the kind of work that only she could make. She had been, she realized, editing. She had been editing her entire career. She stopped editing. Adrien came by the studio on a Tuesday night in early December, after hours, with takeout from the Thai place around the corner. Lena had been there since 5 a.m. She was wearing a flour-dusted apron over her second-favorite sweatshirt, and her hair was in a knot that was, at this point, mostly held up by Will. She let him in through the back door. You look like hell, he said, by way of greeting. Thank you, Adrien. This is why I keep you around. What are you working on? Piece number 9. Sit down. Try this. She put a small spoon in his hand. On the spoon was a quenelle of something pale, not quite white, not quite gold, a soft, curved shape that caught the kitchen light. What is it? Try it first. He tried it. His face did the thing his face did when he was surprised. A small shift, barely visible unless you knew him well, which she now did. Lena. Yeah. What is that? Brown butter ice cream with burnt honey and smoked salt. The smoke is from the oak chips my grandmother's husband used on his ham at Christmas. I called a family friend in Nantucket. He sent me a bag of the chips. I cold smoked the cream overnight. This is the best thing I've ever put in my mouth. Good, it goes with piece 7. What's piece 7? A warm sourdough cracker with a thin layer of my grandmother's plum jam and a shaving of 12-year-aged cheddar. You eat the cracker, then the spoon of ice cream. The cheddar and the burnt honey are the same flavor 40 years apart. That's the idea. That's what the piece is. Adrien sat down on one of the stools at the prep counter. He looked at her for a long time. He had the takeout bag in his lap. He had not opened it. Heart. What? You're making art. I'm making food. You're making art. I don't know if you know you're making art, but you are. And I need you to know it, because when you get to the Blackwell in April and people start using that word in front of you, I want you to be ready for it. Lena leaned against the counter. She wiped her hands on her apron. She looked at him in the dim kitchen light, in his dark coat, with his tired eyes, with the takeout bag in his lap, and a spoon of her brown butter ice cream in his hand. And she thought, clearly, honestly, for the first time, I love this man. She did not say it. She was not ready to say it. She had been doing too much work on herself over the last 5 weeks to say it tonight, because she knew she had to say it right, and she did not yet trust that she would say it for the right reasons. She had spent 31 years confusing need for love. She was not going to do it again. Not even with him. Especially not with him. Instead, she said, "Eat your Thai food, Cole. The ice cream's better cold." He smiled. He opened the bag. They ate pad see ew on stools in her studio at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, and they talked about his zoning case and her exhibit, and whether his mother, who was having some small medical scare that had turned out to be nothing, should stop eating red meat. And when he left at 11, he kissed her, briefly, on the mouth, the first real kiss in 5 weeks of knowing him, because they had not kissed before tonight, because everything else had been too much. And he said, "Don't work past midnight." "I work until I'm done." Heart. Fine. Midnight. She worked until 1. She did not tell him. Her mother found her on a Saturday. It was mid-December. The exhibit was 4 months away. The shop was in the thick of holiday production. Lena had taken 50 custom orders for the 2 weeks before Christmas, bûche de Noël and gingerbread centerpieces and boxes of hand-decorated cookies. And she was, for the first time in her career, saying no to new orders because she had actually sold out. She was behind the counter at 3:15 on a Saturday afternoon, boxing up a stack of orders for a corporate pickup, when the bell jingled over the door and she looked up, and there, in her camel coat and her pearls, was Diane Hart. Her mother's hair had gone grayer at the temples. Lena noticed this immediately, before she noticed anything else. In the 6 weeks since she had seen her, her mother had aged a little, in the way that people age when something is sitting on their chest. They looked at each other across the shop. Marisol, behind Lena, went very still. "Mom," Lena said evenly, "what are you doing here?" "I came to talk to you." "I'm working." "I'll wait. It's going to be a while. I have orders out until 5. "I'll wait." Diane walked to the corner table, the same one Lena had hidden her at 6 weeks ago, and sat down. She did not order anything. She simply sat, hands folded in her lap, her purse on the chair beside her, and she watched Lena work. Lena worked. She boxed orders. She rang up customers. She poured coffee. She piped a last-minute birthday inscription onto a chocolate cake for a walk-in. She did all of it with her mother watching her from the corner, and she did not hurry, and she did not look up more than she had to. And by 5:15, the shop was empty of customers, and Marisol had, quietly and without being asked, turned the sign on the door to closed. "Go home," Lena said to her. "You sure?" "I'm sure." "Boss." "Marisol, go home, please." Marisol went home. Jin went home. Caleb was off that afternoon. The shop was empty except for the two of them. Lena washed her hands. She untied her apron. She hung it on the hook behind the counter. She walked out from behind the register and pulled out the chair across from her mother, and she sat down. "Okay," Lena said. "I'm listening." Diane looked at her for a moment. Her face was not composed, not in the way Lena was used to. The careful mask her mother wore, the one that had been bolted on since Lena was a child, the one that made every cruelty look like concern, was not quite on straight today. There were small cracks in it. Lena did not know whether that was because her mother was genuinely shaken or because her mother was performing shaken, and she made a decision very early in the conversation that she was not going to waste any energy trying to figure out which. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," Diane said. "Okay." "He would be. He would not approve. He thinks you should be the one to come to us. He thinks we shouldn't. He thinks it was appropriate, what he did at the reception." "I don't." Lena did not say anything. "I didn't at the time either, Lena. I want you to know that. When he told me what he was going to say right before the speeches, I told him it was too public. I told him to pull you aside the next morning. He disagreed, and I should have pushed harder. I see that now." Lena looked at her. "You should have pushed harder about the toast," Lena said. "Yes. Not about the eviction itself. Lena, the house is—" "Stop. Mom. Stop. Let me be clear about what you're apologizing for, so I know what we're actually talking about. You are apologizing for the venue of the eviction, not the eviction. You would have had to move out eventually. I was paying you rent. Lena, that was a contribution, not $800 a month for 48 months. That's $38,400. I have every Venmo receipt. I went through them. I printed them out. They're in a folder in my office. Everyone says rent. That was rent. That is in the state we live in, functionally and legally, a tenancy. You didn't give me notice. You didn't give me a lease. You announced at a public event that I had 30 days to vacate, and I heard you tell Linda Carmichael that night that I was a freeloader, which she has since repeated to approximately 19 other women, because I've been getting texts. So when you say you're sorry about the venue, I need you to understand that the venue is the least of what I'm angry about." Diane's hands tightened on the edge of the table. "Linda told you." "No. Linda told Patricia Beaumont, who told her daughter Morgan, who was 2 years behind me at school and still follows me on Instagram. Morgan sent me a message. So did 3 other women you've been telling things to for years, apparently. I had no idea. I genuinely did not know you talked about me like that." "Lena, that's not—" "Mom, I'm not trying to have the argument about whether you did it. I have screenshots. I know you did it. I'm telling you the facts so we don't waste the next 20 minutes on it." Her mother said nothing. She looked down at her hands. "Okay," Diane said, finally. "Okay." "Okay what?" "Okay, I have said things to my friends that I should not have said. About you, for a long time. I want to say I'm sorry for that." "Okay. That's it? Okay. What do you want me to say, Mom?" "I don't know. I thought if I came here, you thought if you came here, I would start crying, and you would start crying, and we would hug, and you would go home and tell Dad that you'd fixed it." Her mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's not fair." "It's completely fair. It's exactly what happened when I was 16 and you forgot my driver's test. It's exactly what happened when I was 19 and you skipped my graduation. It's exactly what happened when I was 26 and you told Aunt Claudia that my first boyfriend had dumped me because I was difficult, when he had dumped me because he was cheating on me with a woman from his office. Every time I cried. Every time you told me you were sorry. Every time nothing changed. So no, Mom. Today I am not crying. I am just listening. That's what I'm able to do today. I'm listening." Diane closed her eyes. A tear, a real one, Lena thought, not a decorative one, went down her cheek. It surprised Lena. It surprised her so much that she almost reached across the table and she caught herself with her hands in her lap, and she breathed. "I don't know how to talk to you," Diane said. I know I never knew how to talk to you. You were always the difficult one. Mason was easy. Celeste was easy. You came out of me angry, Lena. You were a colicky baby. You screamed for the first 4 months of your life, and I was 27 years old, and I didn't know what to do with you. Mom. And then you got older and you were so quiet. You were like a little grown-up. You looked at me like I was an idiot. I don't know. I couldn't reach you. And Celeste was born and she was so easy. She would let me hold her. And you never... Mom. Diane stopped. I was a baby, Lena said quietly. You're describing a baby. I was a baby who cried. I was a 2-year-old who was quiet. Those are baby and toddler things. Those are not character flaws. I know. Do you? Yes. Lena, yes, I know. I've been going to therapy. Did you know that? Since October. Your father doesn't know I've been going on Thursdays. I told him it was bridge. Lena almost laughed. A small, genuine, surprised sound. You're lying to Dad about going to therapy. I am. Jesus, Mom. I know. How's it going? It's awful. Yeah, it would be. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the early winter dark had come down over the street, and the street lights had clicked on, and a cab passed slowly and did not stop. I want to ask you something, Diane said, and I want you to tell me the truth. Okay. Are you seeing someone? Lena sat back. Is that really what you came to ask me? No, I came to say I'm sorry, but yes. Also, I want to know, the man at the wedding, Adrien. Yes, I'm seeing him. Is it serious? Yes. How serious? Mom. Lena, I'm not asking to be nosy. I'm asking because I'm trying to understand who my daughter is now, who you are when you are not with us. I realized, after the wedding, that there is an entire version of you that I do not know, and I have not known for a long time. I don't know your business. I don't know your friends. I don't know this man. I did not know you had a 12-year-old lace piped on the top of Celeste's cake. Your sister told me. 3 days ago. She told me on a video call from Italy. I spent the whole night afterward. She stopped. She was crying again. Real crying. Messy crying. The kind that Lena had not seen from her mother since her grandfather's funeral 20 years ago. I spent the whole night, Diane said, thinking about the cake, about your grandmother, about what it must have been like to make that cake for your sister's wedding and have nobody know. Lena was quiet. I'm not going to pretend, Diane said, that I have become a different person in 6 weeks. I haven't. I am still the person who said those things. To Linda, to you. I did all of it. I can't take any of it back. I can only tell you that I am trying to understand what I did. And it's slow. It's going to be slow. My therapist says I've been in a pattern for 40 years and I can't fix it in a month. I came here today because I wanted to tell you that I'm trying. That's it. That's the whole thing. I'm not asking you to come home for Christmas. I'm not asking you to talk to your father. I am telling you I am trying. Lena looked at her mother for a long time. She did not know what to do with this. She did not know if it was real. She wanted very badly for it to be real. She had wanted, her entire life, for her mother to one day sit across a table from her and say something like this. And now that it was happening, she did not feel the flood of relief she had always imagined. She felt cautious. She felt tired. She felt, in fact, a little irritated that her mother was once again needing her to be gracious. Mom, she said. Yes. I'm glad you're going to therapy. Thank you. I'm not going to come home for Christmas. I know. I don't know when I'm going to come home. I don't know if I am. I know, but I will. I will take a phone call from you. Once a week, if you want, on Sundays, 15 minutes. We can talk about anything. Not about the family, not about Celeste, not about Dad. Just if you want to ask me about the shop or about what I'm doing or what I'm eating for dinner, that's what I can do right now. Diane nodded. She nodded several times, slowly, like she was absorbing it. Sundays, she said. 15 minutes. Yes. Okay. That is what I can do. If you ask for more than that, I'm going to stop picking up. Do you understand me? Yes. If you call Mason or you call Celeste and you tell them I'm being cold or I'm being difficult or I'm punishing you, the Sunday calls stop. Do you understand? Yes. I'm not punishing you, Mom. I want to be very clear about that. I'm protecting something. I'm protecting myself. This is the amount I have. That's all. I understand. Lena nodded. She stood up. She went behind the counter. She poured 2 cups of coffee because her mother had not ordered anything, and because her own hands needed something to do, and she set one in front of Diane. Her mother took it. Her mother's hands were shaking. When do the Sunday calls start? Diane said. This Sunday. What time? 4. I'll call you at 4. Okay? Her mother drank the coffee. She did not say anything for a while. Then quietly, she said, Lena. Yeah. The lace on the cake. I want you to tell me about it. Not now. On Sunday. If you're willing. Tell me about your grandmother. About what she taught you. I didn't know her the way you did. I want to know. I'm asking. Lena could not speak for a moment. Okay, she said. I'll tell you. On Sunday. Her mother stayed for another 10 minutes. She did not try to hug her. She did not try to say anything else. When she left, she put her hand on the door, and she paused, and she turned back, and she said, Your shop is beautiful, Lena. Thank you. I should have said that before. You should have, but thank you. Diane nodded. She went out. The bell jingled, the door closed. Lena stood behind the counter in the empty shop, and she pressed both hands flat on the cold marble, and she put her forehead down between them, and she did not cry. She breathed. She breathed for a long time. The shop smelled like coffee and yeast and brown butter, and somewhere in the back, the walk-in was humming, and outside the streetlight was buzzing in the cold. And Lena Hart, 31 years old, in the apron she had hung on the hook and then forgotten to fold, thought, maybe, I don't know, but maybe. She picked up her phone. She called Adrien. Hart. My mother came to the shop. A pause. How are you? I'm okay. I think. I don't know. Can you come over tonight? I'm already in the car. You're already in the... I saw her park, Lena. An hour ago, I was meeting a client up the block. I saw her get out of the car and walk toward the shop, and I have been sitting in my car for the last hour waiting to see if you called. Lena laughed. She laughed out loud in her empty shop, head bowed against the counter. Adrien. Yeah, that is the creepiest thing anyone has ever done for me. I know. I love it. I know. Come get me. On my way. She locked the shop. She stood on the sidewalk in her coat, and she watched his car pull up to the curb, and he got out, and he did not say anything. He just opened his arms, and she walked into them, and she stood on a cold sidewalk in December with her face against his shoulder, and she let herself, finally, let go of the last small, hard fist of the thing she had been holding for a very long time. When she pulled back, he looked at her. You hungry? Yes. Pancakes? She laughed. Her eyes were wet, but she laughed, and the laugh was real. Pancakes, she said. He took her to Hoffman's. She ate an entire plate of blueberry pancakes and 3 cups of coffee and a side of bacon, and she told him, in order, what her mother had said. He listened. He did not offer advice. He did not tell her what to do. When she finished, he said, You did the right thing. Did I? 15 minutes on Sundays is a very reasonable amount of your life to give a woman who spent 31 years doing what she did. It's generous, actually. I wouldn't have offered her that much. Adrien. I'm not kidding. I don't think you should have offered her that much. But you did, and it was the right thing for you, and that's all that matters. You know yourself, Hart. You know what you can handle. You made a boundary, and you made it clean. I'm proud of you. She looked at him across the table. Adrien? Yeah. I want to tell you something. Okay. I'm not going to say it tonight. I'm going to say it in maybe 3 months. I want you to know it's coming, so that when I say it, so you're not surprised, and so that I don't back out. I am telling you now so that I have to tell you later. He was watching her carefully. He had set down his fork. Okay, he said. I'm not telling you tonight because I want to be sure I'm saying it for the right reasons, not because I was saved, not because I was rescued, not because you showed up. I want to say it because I have Because I have built the thing I need to build. By myself. And then I want to say it. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understand. I want it to be a choice, not a need. I understand, Hart. Okay. 3 months. 3 months. Or thereabouts. Don't hold me to the exact date. I won't. Thank you. You're welcome. They finished the pancakes. He paid the check. They walked back to his car in the cold, and he drove her to the Riverton apartment, and he did not come up because she had not asked him to. And she stood on the sidewalk and she watched him drive away. And then she went upstairs, and she turned on the radiator, and she listened for the violin down the hall. The violin was not playing tonight. The grad student was probably home with her family for the holidays. The apartment was quiet. Lena sat on the floor in her coat and she looked at the cedar box on the counter, and she thought about her grandmother and about her mother sitting in a therapist's office on Thursdays, lying to her father about bridge, and about Adrien waiting in his car on the street for an hour because he had seen Diane Park and was scared to leave, and about the Blackwell Gallery and the $25,000 and the exhibit she was going to install in April, and she thought, quietly, without drama, in the simple voice of a woman sitting on a floor in a coat, I am the happiest I have ever been. It was an astonishing thing to think. She sat with it. She did not try to make it more than it was, and she did not try to make it less. After a while, she got up, and she made herself a small bowl of pasta, and she ate it standing at the kitchen counter, and she went to bed. The first Sunday call came at 4:03 p.m., and Lena let it ring twice before she picked up. Not out of spite, but because she needed the 3 extra seconds to decide what kind of voice she was going to use. Mom. Lena. How are you? I'm well. Your father is at the club. He doesn't know I'm calling. Okay. Is that a problem? It's not my business, Mom. You handle Dad however you handle him. That's not what these calls are for. Right. A pause. Lena could hear the clock on her mother's mantle in the background, the old brass one that chimed the quarter hour, a sound that had been the soundtrack of Lena's entire childhood. She was surprised by how much it still meant to her. Not in a good way, not in a bad way, just in the way old sounds meant things, the way a smell could put you in a room you had not stood in for 15 years. You were going to tell me about your grandmother, Diane said, carefully. I was. If you still want to, I do. So Lena told her. She sat at her little kitchen table in Riverton, the cedar box open on the chair beside her, and she pulled out the things one at a time and she described them. The piping tips, which were German, and which had been Marguerite's wedding present from her own mother. The recipe for the lemon tart in Marguerite's handwriting, with a note in the margin that said, add extra zest when the fruit is dull, trust your nose. The small piece of lace from the wedding dress, torn off years ago for a reason, Lena had never understood until she'd thought to ask Marguerite about it, one summer afternoon when Lena was 16. I tore it off the day your grandfather came home from the war, Marguerite had said. I was so angry he had been gone so long. I tore it off and I put it in my apron pocket, and I kept it there for 40 years because I wanted to remember I had been angry. Don't ever let anyone tell you that love is just the nice parts, Lena. Love is also the part where you rip the lace off your own dress. Her mother was quiet for a long time when Lena finished that part. She said that to you, Diane said. Yes. I didn't know that about her. She didn't tell most people. Why did she tell you? Lena considered it. Because I asked, she said. I don't know, Mom. I asked her a lot of things. She answered most of them. I think she wanted someone to know the real stuff before she died. I don't think it had to be me. I just happened to be the one who asked. I should have asked. Maybe. I didn't know how. Mom. What? That's the thing we're going to have to stop saying. I didn't know how. It was the same hand you raised Mason and Celeste with. You knew how. You just didn't do it with me. It's okay. I'm not saying it to punch you. I'm just saying we can't fix anything if we keep pretending it was a skills gap. It wasn't. You were scared of me. I was scared of you. We were scared of each other my whole life. That's what it was. The line was quiet. Lena heard her mother take a breath. A long one, shaky. You're right, Diane said finally. I was scared of you. I know. Since you were very small. I know. My therapist, she asked me last week why I thought I was scared of you, and I couldn't answer her. I thought about it for 3 days. And the answer I came up with, Lena, I don't know if I have the right to say it to you. Say it. I think I was scared of you because you were the only person in my house who ever looked at me like you could see me. Lena's hand went still on the edge of the cedar box. Mom, your father doesn't see me. He never has. He married me because I was appropriate. Mason worships me because I raised him to. Celeste. Celeste uses me. She has always used me, and I've let her. But you, Lena, you came out looking at me. That first night in the hospital, you looked at me with these enormous dark eyes, and I thought, oh God, this one is going to know. And for 31 years, I have been trying to get out of the room where you were. I don't know if I can explain it any better than that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I swear to you, I didn't see what I was doing until last month. And I can't give you back any of it. You know that. I want you to know that I know what I did. I know. Lena pressed her fingers against her eyes. She had not expected this. In 3 weeks of bracing for this phone call, she had not imagined her mother would say this. She had imagined excuses. She had imagined the performance of grief without the content of it. She had imagined a mother who had been in therapy for 2 months and thought that made her healed. Instead, she had a mother on the other end of the line who had said, in 12 words, the most honest thing Diane Hart had ever said to her daughter. Mom. Yes. Thank you for saying that. Lena, I'm not going to be able to forgive you today, or for a while. Maybe not ever, in the way you want. I want to say that honestly, so we don't pretend. But thank you for saying it. I will remember that you said it. That matters. Okay. Tell me how therapy is, really. It's awful. Yeah, I know. I've done it. It gets worse before it gets better. How much worse? Like 6 months worse. Before the part where it starts being better. So, brace yourself. Her mother laughed. It was a real laugh, a surprised one, the kind Lena had almost never heard. It caught Lena off guard. Her mother's real laugh was, she realized, higher than her social laugh. Thinner, more childlike. The laugh of a girl Diane had been a very long time ago, and had mostly packed away. 6 months, Diane said. God help me. You'll survive. I don't know about that. You will. You're a tough old bird, Mom. I get it from somewhere. They talked for 17 more minutes. Lena told her about the Blackwell, about Odette, about the retainer, about hiring Theo and promoting Marisol. She did not mention Adrien. She was not ready to let her mother have him yet. Some things Lena was going to keep for herself a while longer, and her mother, to her small credit, did not ask. When the call ended at 4:35, Lena set her phone down on the table and she looked at it, and she thought, that was the best conversation I have ever had with my mother. It had also been the most painful conversation. The two were not separate. She was beginning to understand slowly that the real ones were always both. The Sunday calls continued. Some were better than others. One Sunday in January, her mother called at 4 and said, I've been crying since Thursday, and I don't know why. Will you just talk about your bread for 20 minutes while I sit here? And Lena talked about sourdough and the particular humidity of her walk-in and how she had finally figured out why her January crumb was tighter than her July crumb. And Diane, on the other end, cried quietly for 20 minutes while her daughter described hydration percentages. And at the end, Diane said, Thank you, and hung up. Another Sunday in February, Diane called and said, Your father found out I've been going to therapy. He's furious. He thinks I've been poisoned by liberal nonsense. We had a terrible fight. I told him I was going to keep going anyway. I wanted to tell someone. I don't know who else to tell. Tell your therapist. I have another 3 days before I see her. Okay, tell me. And Lena listened to her mother describe, for the first time in either of their lives, what her marriage had actually been, and it was not a good story. And when Diane finally trailed off, Lena said very gently, Mom, you don't have to stay. I'm 61, Lena. I know. Where would I go? I don't know. But you don't have to stay. Not because of me, not because of the girls, just if you don't want to stay, you don't have to. Diane did not answer, but she was quiet in a different way than Lena had ever heard her be quiet. And when she hung up, Lena had the strange, dizzy feeling that she had just said something to her mother that her mother had never allowed herself to be told. Celeste came back from Italy and went quiet for 2 months. Then in February, she sent Lena a long email. Not a text. An email because the text form had apparently not felt big enough. Lena read it in the apartment at 7 in the morning with a cup of coffee going cold in her hand. It was a real apology. It was messy and too long, and it repeated itself in places. And there were 2 paragraphs that were frankly self-pitying and that Lena did not particularly forgive her for writing, but it was real. Celeste said she had been watching Diane's changes and had finally understood on the honeymoon that her entire life she had been rewarded for things Lena had been punished for. She said she had been the golden child, and the cost of the golden child was never having to see clearly, and she was beginning to see clearly now, and it was horrible, and she did not expect Lena to fix it for her, and she did not expect forgiveness, and she was just writing to say she was sorry and to ask if, sometime, months from now, maybe, they could try to be sisters in a different way. Lena read the email 3 times. Then she wrote back. 4 sentences. I got this. I'm not going to respond properly today. I will respond eventually. I'm glad you wrote it, Cel. And that was where she left it. She did not know yet what she was going to do with her sister. She did not have to know. The email sat in her inbox, and she returned to it, sometimes, and read it again. And every time she read it, she felt a tiny bit less angry, and she thought, maybe in a year, maybe in 2, we'll see. Bam. The Blackwell Gallery show opened on the second Friday in April. Lena spent the week leading up to it in a state of barely controlled panic. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night for 3 weeks. The 12 pieces were done, tested, retested, tested again. Each element timed to the minute. Each plating practiced until her hands could do it without her brain. But something in her, the old something, the something her mother had planted in her when she was very small, kept whispering, "They're going to hate it. They're going to see that you were never actually good. They're going to take it away." She did not listen. She did not anymore listen when that voice spoke. She had learned to notice it and not argue with it and not obey it, which was, her own therapist had told her, the only way it ever got quieter. You did not kill it. You simply stopped feeding it. Adrien had driven up from the city on Thursday afternoon. He took her out to eat. He made her drink 2 glasses of water and go to bed by 11. He did not say a single thing about the show, or about how he felt about the show, or about what he thought was going to happen. He asked her about Theo's new ice cream base. He asked her about the violin student down the hall, who had, over the winter, become Lena's friend, a 24-year-old named Phoebe, who now came over for dinner twice a month, and had started calling Lena when she had bad days. He asked her about nothing that mattered in the short term, which was, Lena knew, an enormous and deliberate act of love. Friday came. She arrived at the Blackwell at noon to do the final setup. The gallery had cleared out its main room and replaced the art on the walls with a single continuous line of framed black and white photographs that Odette had commissioned, photographs of Lena's hands at work over the last 4 months. Lena had not seen them before. They had been shot by a photographer named Sabine, who had come to the studio 6 times and taken maybe 3,000 photos, and Odette had curated 24 of them, and they were, Lena understood as soon as she saw them, the most accurate portrait of her work that had ever been made. Her hands shaping dough, her hands piping, her hands holding a peeled pear, her hands wiping a plate clean, her hands holding her grandmother's bench scraper. Her hands, she had not known this photo existed, holding the cedar box, that first night in the apartment, on the counter, with the light coming in the factory windows. She stood in the gallery in the middle of the afternoon and she looked at the photographs and she did not cry, because she had learned to not always cry, but her throat felt hot and strange, and Odette came up beside her and put a small firm hand on her arm. Lena. I know. When did you? Sabine has been working on them since December. We didn't want to show you until today. I wanted you to walk in and see them the way the guests will see them. Odette. Yes. I don't look like that. Those hands, those are your hands, Lena. Those are exactly your hands. That's what they look like. I know you can't see it. That's why we took the pictures. Lena stood there and she looked at 24 photographs of her own hands, and she understood for the first time that her hands were not little hands, not cute hands, not the hands of a girl who plays with flour. They were a pastry chef's hands. They were the hands of a woman who had, by herself, built something. They were working hands. They were beautiful. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay. Let's open." The opening was at 7. By 6:30, the room was full. Odette had invited 200 people, collectors, other artists, a few chefs whose names Lena had written on her notebooks in culinary school, a food critic from the national paper who had flown in from 3 hours away, and, without telling Lena, a handful of Lena's own guests. Marisol and Jin and Theo and Caleb, who stood together near the back looking tremendously uncomfortable in clothes they had bought for the occasion. Phoebe, the violinist, who had come without her violin but was wearing a dress she had, Lena knew, bought specifically to come look at 24 pictures of her friend's hands. Nora, the landlord, with her partner. A handful of other people from Lena's life, people Lena had not quite understood were her life until she saw them together in one room. And Adrien. And Lena did not see her at first because she was not looking for her, and because she was standing in a simple dark dress and not drawing attention to herself. But in the far corner, near the photograph of Lena's hands on the cedar box, stood Diane. Lena saw her. Their eyes met. Diane did not wave. She did not come forward. She lifted her hand slightly, the way you lift your hand when you want someone to know you are there, but you do not want to interrupt them, and Lena lifted her hand back. Her father was not there. Her father was, as far as Lena knew, at home, probably watching golf, probably still furious about the therapy. Mason was not there. Celeste was not there. Celeste had emailed 2 weeks ago and asked if Lena would want her to come, and Lena had written back, honestly, not yet, and Celeste had written back, okay. Good luck, Lee. I love you. And Lena had almost cried at her desk. But Diane had come. Quietly, by herself, probably lying to Richard about where she was. Diane had come. The exhibit opened at 7:15. Lena did not speak much during the opening. Odette introduced her briefly. Lena said a few sentences she had rehearsed. Thanked the gallery, thanked her team, thanked, without naming her, her grandmother. And then she got out of the way and let the work speak. The guests moved through the room. The 12 pieces were served, one at a time, at intervals, on plates arranged around the gallery. The photographs hung above them. The room was quiet in the way a room gets quiet when people are actually looking at something. The piece called Inheritance was broken, as designed, in front of the first guest who chose it, a woman in her 70s, a painter Lena had admired for years, who stood in front of the sugar-lace dome and watched Lena strike it once with a small silver hammer, watched the lace shatter, watched the pear sit in its broken cage, and did not move for several seconds. Then she picked up the pear with her hands, and she ate it, and she looked at Lena with her mouth full of wine-poached fruit, and she said, loudly enough for the room to hear, "You are a very dangerous young woman." The room laughed. Lena laughed. It was the best review she would ever receive. The food critic stayed for 3 hours. He ate all 12 pieces. He did not say anything to Lena directly during the opening, which she understood was a good sign. Critics who had made up their minds in favor tended to stay quiet during the actual event. He would, 11 days later, publish a review that used the word genius in the first paragraph, and that would change the trajectory of Lena's career in a way she could not, standing at the Blackwell that Friday night, have imagined. At some point near the end of the night, Diane came over to her. Lena saw her coming. She had time to prepare. She did not need much time. She was, she realized, ready for this. She had been ready for weeks. Lena. Mom. This is, I don't have the words for it. Thank you. Your grandmother. Yes. She would have, Lena, she would have, I know. Diane put a hand on Lena's arm. She did not try to hug her. She did not try to cry on her. She did not try to make the night about herself. She just stood there for a moment, her hand on her daughter's arm, and looked at her. I don't know how to be proud of you, Diane said quietly. I never learned. I'm standing here and I feel it and I don't have any language for it. I just wanted you to know I feel it. Even if I say it wrong, I feel it, Lena. Lena looked at her mother. Something happened inside her in that moment. Something small but real, something final. It was not forgiveness. She would not have called it that, not yet. It was simply the setting down of a thing she had carried for a very long time. She had been waiting since she was 4 years old to hear her mother say, in any form, the words, "I am proud of you." She had stopped waiting for it officially about 5 years ago and had told herself she no longer needed it. This had turned out to be a lie, she told herself, a kindness she gave to her younger self, because she had in fact still been waiting. She had waited every day. And now, here, in this gallery, in April, at 31 years old, in front of the work she had made by herself, in the presence of the people she had built a life with, her mother had not quite said the words. Her mother had said, "I don't know how." And somehow that was better. Somehow that was more real than any clean sentence would have been, because the clean sentence would have been a performance. The broken sentence was the truth. "Thank you, Mom." "Okay, go home. Dad's going to notice you're gone." "He won't." "He will. Go home." Diane nodded. She squeezed Lena's arm. She walked out of the gallery into the April night, alone, and Lena watched her go, and she thought, that's enough. For tonight. That's enough. She turned back to the room. Adrien was leaning against the far wall, watching her, his hands in his pockets, his face doing the thing it did when he was proud of her, which was, she had come to realize, a very specific tilt of his head and a very small lift of one corner of his mouth. He did not come toward her. He was giving her the room. He was, as he had been for 6 months, exactly as present as she needed him to be, and no more. She walked over to him. She stood in front of him. She looked up at his face. "Heart. Adrien. Good show. Thanks. I think you're about to have a career. I think I might be. How do you feel?" "Tired. Also good. Also a little scared." "That tracks." She reached up and she took his face in both of her hands, and she kissed him in the middle of the Blackwell Gallery, in front of about 80 people, in a way that was not private. He kissed her back. When she pulled away, she said very quietly, for his ears only, "It's been 3 months." He looked at her. "I was counting," he said. "I know it has. I'm telling you tonight." "Okay. I love you. I have loved you since about October, I think. Honestly, maybe September. I wasn't sure until January. Now I'm sure. I built what I needed to build. I'm not saying it because I need you. I'm saying it because I want you. There's a difference, and I wanted you to know I know the difference. That's it. That's the whole thing." Adrien Cole looked at her for a long moment. "Okay," he said. "Good." "Good?" "Yes." "That's all you're going to say?" "For now." "I love you too, Lena. I have for longer than you have. I'm not going to make a speech about it in the middle of your opening, but yes, good." She laughed. She put her forehead against his shoulder. Somewhere across the room, someone was asking Odette a question about one of the pieces. Somewhere, a glass of wine was being refilled. Somewhere, her mother was in a cab heading home to a house Lena would not return to for a very long time, maybe ever. Somewhere, the 12 pieces of her exhibit were being eaten, slowly, by strangers who understood them better than her family ever had. The review came out 11 days later. A new voice in American pastry, working in a form that may be closer to sculpture or time-based performance than to cooking as the country has understood it. Lena read it at the studio at 6 in the morning on her phone, and she did not cry. She just sat on a stool and laughed. And Marisol came in an hour later and found her still sitting there. And Marisol read the review over Lena's shoulder. And Marisol said, "Boss, you're screwed now. You know that, right?" "But that J all see people does." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're about to have the most insane year of our lives. You're going to have to raise prices. You're going to have to hire again. You're going to have to turn people away. You're going to have to think about what you want Heart and Honey to be in 5 years. You're going to have to start saying no to things. You know how good you are at saying no." "I'm getting better." "You're not good yet." "I'm getting better, Marisol." "Prove it. Say no to a custom order today, just one. I'll watch." Lena said no to 3 custom orders that day. Marisol watched each one and nodded approvingly. By the end of the week, Lena had started a wait list. By the end of the month, the wait list was 9 months long. The gallery commissioned a second show for the fall. A small publisher reached out about a book. A film festival asked her to collaborate on a dinner for their opening night gala. A restaurant group in another city offered her the head pastry position at a flagship restaurant that would be opening the following spring, with a signing bonus that was more money than her father had ever made in a year. She said no to the restaurant group. She said yes to the book. She said maybe to the film festival, and eventually yes. She doubled her studio staff. She began to design a second location, not a retail shop but a workspace, a teaching kitchen, a place where she could host small cooking classes and host private events and take on apprentices, which was something she had been quietly dreaming about since she was 24. She signed the lease on the second location in July. She signed it in her own name. She paid the deposit from her own account. She did not call her parents to tell them. Her mother found out because Marisol mentioned it on a Sunday call. Diane said, "Oh, she didn't tell me." And Marisol, who had gotten bolder over the months, said, "No, ma'am, she didn't, but I bet she will when she's ready." Diane did not bring it up. The next Sunday, when Lena told her about the new space, Diane just said, "That's wonderful, honey," and asked what kind of ovens Lena was buying, and Lena talked about ovens for 10 minutes, and neither of them acknowledged that Diane had already known, and that was somehow fine. She and Adrien moved in together in August. Not into his apartment, not into hers. They found a place together. A small row house in a neighborhood halfway between his office and her studio, with a narrow kitchen and a backyard the size of a postage stamp and a front stoop where, Lena decided almost immediately, she was going to sit every summer night and drink coffee and watch the neighborhood walk its dogs. She did not give up her Riverton apartment right away. She sublet it to Phoebe, the violinist, who had outgrown her own place and needed somewhere cheap to finish her degree. Lena charged her less than Nora had charged Lena. It seemed right. The night before the move, Lena sat alone in the Riverton apartment, in the empty living room, on the floor, in a way that mirrored her first night there 9 months earlier. And she thought about the woman who had sat in that same spot in a wedding dress and a coat full of someone else's jacket, and had not known where the next month of her life was going to come from. That woman was gone now. Not dead, not erased, just grown up. She had been inside of Lena for a long time, a small, frightened version of herself. And Lena had stopped being her the way a person stops being a teenager, gradually and then all at once, and not by deciding to. By living through the thing that made it no longer possible to be her. She did not miss her. She did not thank her, exactly, either. She just nodded at her, in her head, the way you nod at someone across a crowded room who you used to know, and she stood up, and she turned out the light, and she closed the door. Adrien was waiting in the car. He had come to drive her over. She did not need the ride. He was offering it anyway because it was their last night as 2 people in 2 apartments, and he was, about some things, a sentimentalist, and she had learned to let him have that. She got in the car. "Heart, yeah. Ready?" "Yes." He pulled away from the curb. She watched the factory windows of the Riverton apartment recede in the side mirror, the place where she had, if she was being honest, actually become the person she was now. Not at the Blackwell, not in her mother's living room, not in Adrien's arms. In that apartment, alone, on a mattress on the floor, listening to a violin through the wall. Autumn came. The second show at the Blackwell opened. The book deal was signed. The new location broke ground in October, a week before the anniversary of Celeste's wedding, which was, Lena noticed and then did not dwell on, a small and private piece of poetic timing. She saw her father for the first time in a year at a funeral, a week after her 32nd birthday. The funeral was for her great-uncle, her father's brother, a man Lena had loved quietly all her life, and who had been, in his own gruff way, one of the few hearts who had ever treated her like a whole person. She went alone. Adrien offered to come. She said no, because she wanted to do this by herself, because she had earned the right to do things by herself, and because some things you did not drag a partner into. Her father was by his grave. He looked older. He looked, she thought, smaller. He saw her across the grass. She walked over. She put her hand on his arm for 3 seconds, and then took it away. "Dad?" "Lena, I'm sorry about Uncle Walter." "Yes." "He was a good man." "He was." That was the whole conversation. He did not apologize. She did not demand one. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not warmth, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement. The thing a father and a daughter can give each other when there is nothing else left. He was not going to change. She had stopped needing him to. He was who he was, and she was who she was, and they were related, and they would be related at every funeral for the rest of their lives. And they would exchange 3 sentences, and it would not be enough. And she would not ask it to be enough. And that was how they would live. She went home that night and cried for 20 minutes, and Adrien made her pasta, and she slept. Celeste came to the new location when it opened in March. She came alone. Brooks, Lena had gathered, did not feature in Celeste's life quite the way Celeste had once advertised. There had been some trouble over the first year of the marriage. Celeste did not explain it, and Lena did not ask. Some things were not Lena's business anymore. Her sister walked in at the quiet hour of the opening, a little before 10 in the morning, with a small white box under her arm. She set the box on the counter. She looked around at the teaching kitchen. She did not cry. She did not perform. She just stood there and looked at it. Lee. Cel. This is really something. Thank you. I brought you something. You don't have to. I know it's not the thing that fixes it. I just wanted to bring it. What is it? Open it. Lena opened the box. Inside was a small, slightly lopsided Madeleine. It was Celeste's handwriting on a little card beside it. I've been learning to bake. This is my 18th attempt at this one. It's still not good. I wanted you to eat the first one I was willing to let anyone see. Lena looked up at her sister. This was the first thing Lena noticed, not wearing mascara or foundation, or any of the armor that had been, for their entire adult lives, the thing Celeste hid behind. She looked tired. She looked like a person. Cel. It's not good. I know it's not. You don't have to. Cel. What? Thank you. Lena ate the Madeleine. It was genuinely not good. It was a little dense, and the lemon was too strong. But it was made by her sister's hands, in a kitchen Lena had never been invited to, during some difficult months Lena had not been part of, and it was, in its way, a complete sentence. It's not bad, Cel. It's bad. It's not. It needs less lemon. And you overworked the batter. But the crumb is honest. That's the hardest part. You're going to be okay. Celeste laughed. She laughed with her whole face, in a way she had not laughed in 20 years. And Lena laughed with her. And the two of them stood in the teaching kitchen of Lena's new business, the sister who had been given everything and the sister who had been given nothing. And they were, for the first time since they had been very small, just 2 women in a room. I'm trying, Lee. I know. I don't know if it's going to work, the marriage. I don't know. You don't have to know today. I miss you. I know. I know I can't just stop, okay? We're doing this. Right now. This is us doing this. You don't have to earn the right to stand in this kitchen. You're here. We're talking. Just be here. Don't apologize for being here. Celeste nodded. She wiped her eye with her sleeve. She had never, in Lena's memory, wiped her eye with a sleeve. She had always had a handkerchief. She was, Lena realized, learning to be a different person. It was going to take her years. It was going to be messy. She was going to fall back sometimes into old patterns. But she was trying. That was the lesson, Lena thought, standing there. That was the whole lesson of the last year and a half. People did not transform. They tried. The trying was the whole thing. Her mother tried. Her sister was trying now. Her father did not try, and that was its own kind of answer. Adrien had tried without being asked, since the very first night. Lena had tried and was still trying, and would be trying for the rest of her life. Trying to be a person who chose herself before she tried to earn anyone else's love. Trying to be a woman whose worth did not live in other people's hands. Trying to be someone who could be given a family and also make a family and know the difference. And honor both. She married Adrien on a Saturday in June, 2 years and 8 months after the night in the Ashbourne estate parking lot. It was a small wedding by any reasonable standard. 42 people in a garden in Riverton, a half-mile from the apartment she had lived in that first terrible winter. Marisol was her maid of honor. Theo and Jin and Caleb were there, and Nora and Phoebe, who played the violin during the ceremony, a piece she had written herself and had been rehearsing for 4 months. Odette came. Marguerite's old friend from Nantucket came. An 86-year-old man who had made Marguerite laugh at parties 60 years ago and who sat in the front row and cried quietly through the vows. And when Lena saw him crying, she felt for a second like her grandmother was in the garden with them, which was not a religious thought and not a mystical one, just a true one. Her mother came. Her mother was, by now, legally separated from her father. It had taken Diane 14 months to make the decision and another 4 to execute it, and she had lost half her friends and most of her savings, and she was, for the first time in her life, living alone in a small condo that was, by any of the old standards, beneath her. And she was, by every new standard, more herself than she had ever been. She came in a simple blue dress. She did not try to give a speech. She sat in the second row and she cried when Lena said her vows. And afterward, at the dinner, she came over and she said, "I am proud of you, Lena." And the words came out in the right order, and Lena hugged her, for the first time in 3 years. And it was not what 8-year-old Lena had dreamed of. It was better, because it was real. Celeste came too. She came by herself. The marriage had not worked. She had moved into a studio apartment a block from Lena's studio a year before, and she worked in a gallery now, not Odette's, a smaller one. And she was in therapy, and she was trying, and she was a different person than she had been, and she was in ways Lena had not expected, becoming someone Lena actually liked. She read a small piece of a letter during the reception, a piece she had written to Lena and had asked permission to share. The piece was 3 sentences long. It said, "My sister saved her own life. She did not ask me to save it for her. I am going to spend the rest of mine trying to deserve her." Mason did not come. Mason had sent a gift, a check, which Lena had, without saying anything to anyone, torn up and thrown in the trash. He would come around eventually, or he would not. It was no longer her job to figure out which. Her father did not come. He had not been invited. He had, the week before, mailed her a card with no note inside it, just his signature. Lena had looked at it for a long time and then put it in the cedar box, not as a keepsake, but as a piece of evidence of who he had been. Someday, if she had children, she would show it to them, not to punish him, just so that they knew what a complete absence looked like, so they would recognize it if it ever came for them. After the wedding, after the dinner, after the last guest had left and the caterers had packed up, and Adrien had gone inside to take off his shoes, Lena stood alone in the garden for a long moment. The light was blue. The violinist had gone home. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog was barking. She thought about the parking lot of the Ashbourne estate. She thought about the woman who had sat on that curb in a champagne dress with her feet bleeding. She thought about how that woman had almost not made the phone call, how close she had come to putting the phone down, to going back inside, to smiling for one more photo, to eating one more silent dinner at table 14, to carrying her grandmother's lace around unseen for the rest of her life. How small the difference had been between that life and this one. How it had hinged on a single decision, on a single call, on allowing a single person to show up for her. She thought about the long way she had come. She thought about what it had cost. She thought about what it had given her. She thought, if you are listening to this story right now, and you are sitting in your own parking lot, in your own wedding dress, in your own bleeding shoes, in a family that does not see you, I want you to know this. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to choose yourself. The love you have been trying to earn was never a thing you could have earned because it was not being offered. That is not your failure. That is not a flaw in you. That is the simple, cold fact of who they are. And the minute you understand it, you are free. You may not feel free yet. You may not look free yet, but you will be. It will take a year. It will take 2. It will take the worst night of your life and a phone call you almost didn't make. It will take a cedar box and a cheap apartment and a violin through a wall and a man who drives to a parking lot and waits 90 minutes in the cold. Or it will take none of those things, and it will take whatever it takes for you. But it will come. The life you have not yet lived is already waiting for you. You just have to be willing to walk out the door. Lena stood in the garden a moment longer. Then she turned and she went inside, to her husband, to her house, to the life she had made with her own hands. And she closed the door behind her gently, and she did not look back.